Welcome, dear listener, to this quiet hour we're sharing together, wherever you are right now. I'm glad you've chosen to spend this time exploring something truly remarkable with me. Tonight we're going to explore one of nature's most universal mysteries, sleep, including not only human sleep, but also the sleep patterns of other animals. The sleep of creatures across our planet, from the smallest shrew to the largest whale. From birds who rest half their brain at a time to dolphins who never fully close their eyes, is being discussed. If you find these nighttime explorations helpful, I would love for you to subscribe so we can continue these gentle conversations together. And I'm always curious, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Wherever you are, let's settle in together. Tonight, we're going to talk about the human heart, but not in the way you might expect. We're not going to focus on poetry or romance, on metaphors about love or courage. Instead, we're going to do something perhaps even more remarkable. We're going to look at the heart as what it truly is, a pump. A tireless, elegant, surprisingly humble organ that has been beating inside you without any conscious effort on your part, somewhere between 60 and 100 times per minute. Every minute, of every hour, of every day, of your entire life. Now, let's begin at the very beginning. Let's start with the simple, almost boring truth about what your heart actually is. Your heart is a muscle. That's it, really. It's about the size of your closed fist, a bit larger if you're tall, a bit smaller if you're petite, and it weighs somewhere between 8 and 12 ounces. Less than a can of soup. It sits slightly left of center in your chest, tucked between your lungs, behind your sternum, in a space called the mediastinum. If you were to open a medical textbook and look at a diagram, you'd see it drawn with remarkable precision. 4 chambers, various vessels sprouting from the top like plumbing fixtures, and a neat cross-section showing walls of varying thickness. But here's what those diagrams never quite capture. Your heart is soft, warmer than you'd think, dark red, almost purple in places, and it moves. Not just the rhythmic contracting and relaxing that we call a heartbeat, but a kind of writhing, twisting motion as it works. It's perpetually slick with a thin layer of fluid, housed in a protective sac called the pericardium, which keeps it from rubbing against your other organs as it does its endless work. Let me tell you what I find most remarkable about the heart, and it's something that won't sound remarkable at all at first. The heart is boring. Beautifully, elegantly, almost magnificently boring. It does the same thing over and over and over again. Contract, relax, fill, squeeze, receive, expel. It's been doing this since you were an embryo the size of a poppy seed, and it will continue doing this until the very last moment of your life. No vacation days, no lunch breaks, no weekends off. Right now, as you're listening to this, your heart is beating. You probably weren't thinking about it until I mentioned it, were you? That's the genius of it. This organ that is literally keeping you alive operates almost entirely outside your conscious awareness. You can't decide to stop your heart, not really. You can hold your breath, but your heart will keep beating. You can lie perfectly still, but your heart carries on. Even when you sleep, especially when you sleep, your heart is there, working in the darkness, moving blood through 96,000 kilometers of vessels, reaching every cell in your body. Let's talk about the structure, because understanding how something is built helps us understand how it works. The heart has 4 chambers, but it's easier to think of it as 2 pumps side by side, each with 2 rooms. On the right side, you have the right atrium and the right ventricle. On the left side, the left atrium and the left ventricle. These 2 sides are separated by a wall called the septum, and under normal circumstances, blood never crosses from one side to the other. The right side of your heart is the side that deals with what we call deoxygenated blood. This is blood that has travelled through your body, delivered its oxygen to your tissues, and returned carrying carbon dioxide and other waste products. It's darker in colour, that deep burgundy red you see in medical shows. This blood arrives at the right atrium from two large veins, the superior vena cava, which brings blood from your upper body, and the inferior vena cava, which brings blood from your lower body. The right atrium is a receiving chamber. It's not particularly muscular. Its walls are thin, only about 2 millimeters thick, because it doesn't need to generate much pressure. It simply needs to collect the returning blood and pass it along to the right ventricle below it. Between these two chambers sits a valve, the tricuspid valve, so named because it has 3 cusps, or flaps. This valve opens when the atrium contracts, allowing blood to flow down into the ventricle, and then closes to prevent blood from washing back up. Now, the right ventricle is where things get more interesting. It's considerably more muscular than the atrium, with walls about 3 to 5 millimeters thick. Its job is to pump that deoxygenated blood out of the heart and into the lungs, where it will release carbon dioxide and pick up fresh oxygen. This journey to the lungs is relatively short, maybe 20 to 30 centimeters at most, so the right ventricle doesn't need to generate enormous pressure, just enough to push the blood through the pulmonary arteries and into the vast network of capillaries that surround your lungs' air sacs. The left side of your heart is where the real heavy lifting happens. After blood has been refreshed in the lungs, it returns to the heart through the pulmonary veins, usually 4 of them, and enters the left atrium. Again, this is a thin-walled receiving chamber collecting the bright red, oxygen-rich blood and preparing to pass it along. Between the left atrium and left ventricle sits another valve, the mitral valve, which has 2 cusps instead of 3. Sometimes called the bicuspid valve, it opens and closes with the same purpose. Forward flow only, no backwash. The left ventricle is the powerhouse. Its walls are thick, 10 to 15 millimeters of solid cardiac muscle, because this chamber has an enormous job. It needs to generate enough pressure to send blood to every part of your body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, up against gravity to your brain, down the length of your legs, through your kidneys, your liver, and your intestines, out to your skin, your bones, your fingernails, everywhere. When the left ventricle contracts, blood is forced out through the aortic valve and into the aorta, the largest artery in your body. The aorta arches up and over like a candy cane, then descends down through your chest and abdomen, branching again and again into smaller and smaller vessels until the blood reaches the microscopic capillaries where actual exchange happens. Oxygen and nutrients out, carbon dioxide and waste products in. And then the whole cycle begins again. The blood, now deoxygenated, makes its way back through progressively larger veins until it reaches the right atrium, ready for another lap. This happens about 70 times per minute when you're at rest, more when you're active. If you live to be 80 years old, your heart will have beaten approximately 3 billion times. 3 billion cycles of filling and squeezing, receiving and expelling. It's almost absurd when you think about it. Let's talk about the valves for a moment, because they're easy to overlook but absolutely essential. Your heart has 4 valves, the tricuspid, pulmonary, mitral, and aortic, and each one is a small masterpiece of engineering. They're made of thin, flexible tissue covered in endothelium, the same smooth lining that covers the inside of your blood vessels. When they're working properly, they're completely silent. You never hear them, you never feel them, but they're not passive. Each valve is connected to small muscular cords called chordae tendineae, literally heartstrings in Latin, which attach to papillary muscles in the ventricle walls. When the ventricles contract, these papillary muscles contract too. pulling on the chordae tendineae to prevent the valves from flipping backward like an umbrella in the wind. It's a beautifully choreographed movement, all happening in a fraction of a second. When valves malfunction, you hear it. A heart murmur is usually the sound of turbulent blood flow caused by a valve that doesn't close completely or doesn't open fully. Sometimes these murmurs are harmless, just small quirks in the plumbing. Other times they indicate problems that need attention. But the valve itself makes no sound when it's working correctly. Only when something goes wrong does it announce its presence. Now let's talk about what the heart is made of, because this is where things become genuinely fascinating. The heart wall has 3 layers. The outermost layer, the epicardium, is thin and delicate, essentially the inner layer of the pericardial sac. The middle layer, the myocardium, is where the muscle lives. Thick, strong, striated, cardiac muscle cells that are unlike any other muscle in your body. And the innermost layer, the endocardium, is that smooth endothelial lining I mentioned, creating a slick surface for blood to flow across. Cardiac muscle is strange and wonderful. Under a microscope, it looks somewhat like skeletal muscle, the kind in your arms and legs, with those same striations, those parallel bands of protein filaments that slide past each other to create contraction. But cardiac muscle cells are branched and interconnected in ways that skeletal muscle cells are not. They link together through structures called intercalated discs, which contain gap junctions, tiny channels that allow electrical signals to pass directly from one cell to another. This matters enormously. It means that cardiac muscle doesn't need to be told to contract by the nervous system the way your biceps does. Instead, cardiac muscle is inherently rhythmic. It generates its own electrical impulses, passes them from cell to cell through those gap junctions, and contracts as a coordinated unit. Your heart would beat even if you severed every nerve connecting it to your brain. In fact, if you removed a heart from a body and kept it supplied with oxygen and nutrients, it would continue beating on its own for a while. That's both remarkable and slightly unsettling. The heart's electrical system is governed by a small cluster of cells in the right atrium called the sinoatrial node, or SA node. This is your heart's natural pacemaker. About 70 times per minute, give or take, the SA node generates an electrical impulse that spreads across both atria, causing them to contract and squeeze blood into the ventricles. The impulse then reaches another cluster of cells called the atrioventricular node, or AV node, which sits between the atria and ventricles. The AV node does something clever. It delays the signal just briefly, about 1/10 of a second, giving the atria time to finish contracting before the ventricles get started. Then it passes the signal down through specialized conducting fibers called the bundle of His, which splits into left and right bundle branches, which further divide into Purkinje fibers that spread throughout the ventricle walls. The result is that both ventricles contract almost simultaneously, from the bottom up, squeezing blood efficiently toward the exit valves. This electrical activity is what an electrocardiogram, or ECG, measures. Those familiar squiggly lines you see on medical shows represent the depolarization and repolarization of different parts of the heart. The P wave is atrial contraction. The QRS complex is ventricular contraction. The T wave is ventricular relaxation, getting ready for the next cycle. It's electrical poetry written by your heart over and over, all day and all night. But here's something that might surprise you. The heart doesn't rely solely on its own power. It gets help from the blood vessels themselves. When blood is ejected from the left ventricle into the aorta, that large elastic artery stretches to accommodate the sudden volume. Then during diastole, the relaxation phase, the aorta recoils, like a spring releasing, which helps maintain blood pressure and keeps blood flowing smoothly even between heartbeats. This is called the Wind-Kessel effect, and it's one of the reasons why arterial stiffness, which increases with age, is such a concern. When arteries lose their elasticity, the heart has to work harder. Let's talk about blood flow through the heart in more detail, because this is where the elegance of the design becomes apparent. Blood enters the right atrium under very low pressure. The venous system is a low pressure system. By the time blood has travelled through all those capillaries and back through the veins, most of the pressure generated by the heart has dissipated. The blood sort of pools in the right atrium, waiting. When the atrium contracts, it gives the blood a gentle squeeze, topping off the right ventricle, which has already been filling passively. Then the right ventricle contracts, the tricuspid valve snaps shut, the pulmonary valve opens, and blood is pushed into the pulmonary arteries. These arteries branch and branch, following the airways in the lungs until they become capillaries so narrow that red blood cells have to pass through single file. In the lungs, the capillaries wrap around tiny air sacs called alveoli. The walls of these capillaries are incredibly thin, just one cell thick, and oxygen diffuses across from the air you've breathed in, binding to hemoglobin in your red blood cells. At the same time, carbon dioxide diffuses in the opposite direction, from blood to air, ready to be exhaled. This exchange happens continuously, breath after breath, heartbeat after heartbeat. The refreshed blood then flows into the pulmonary veins, one of the few places in the body where veins carry oxygenated blood, and returns to the left atrium. The left atrium contracts, the mitral valve opens, and the left ventricle fills. Then comes the main event. The left ventricle contracts, the mitral valve closes, the aortic valve opens, and blood is launched into the aorta with enough force to create a palpable pulse that you can feel in your wrist, your neck, your groin, or anywhere an artery runs close to the surface. The amount of blood your heart pumps is staggering. At rest, about 5 litres per minute. That's your entire blood volume circulating through your heart every minute. During exercise, this can increase to 25 or even 30 litres per minute in a well-trained athlete. Your heart is pumping more than 6,000 litres of blood every day. Over a year, that's more than 2 million litres. Over a lifetime, we're talking about hundreds of millions of litres, all moved by this fist-sized muscle without you ever having to think about it. The heart needs its own blood supply, of course. It would be rather useless to pump blood everywhere else, but starve itself. This is where the coronary arteries come in. The right and left coronary arteries branch off from the aorta just above the aortic valve, and they wrap around the surface of the heart like a crown, hence coronary, delivering oxygen-rich blood to the cardiac muscle itself. These coronary arteries are small but critical. The left main coronary artery splits into 2 major branches. The left anterior, descending artery, which runs down the front of the heart, and the circumflex artery, which wraps around to the back. The right coronary artery supplies the right side of the heart, and, in most people, the bottom portion of the left ventricle as well. When these arteries become blocked by atherosclerotic plaques, blood clots, or spasms, the result is a heart attack or myocardial infarction. Portions of the heart muscle, starved of oxygen, begin to die. The heart is one of the few organs that doesn't regenerate well after injury. Your liver can regrow, your skin heals, even your bones can mend, but cardiac muscle has very limited regenerative capacity. When heart muscle dies, it's typically replaced by scar tissue, tough fibrous material that doesn't contract. This is why heart attacks are so serious, and why prevention, through managing blood pressure, cholesterol, and other risk factors, is so important. Let me tell you something about the heart's metabolism, because it's quietly extraordinary. The heart is an endurance athlete. It never sprints. It never rests. It maintains a steady aerobic pace for your entire life. To do this, it burns an enormous amount of energy. The heart consumes more oxygen per gram of tissue than almost any other organ in your body. It's metabolically expensive. Cardiac muscle cells are packed with mitochondria, those tiny cellular power plants that convert nutrients into usable energy. In fact, mitochondria make up about a third of the volume of a cardiac muscle cell. Compare that to skeletal muscle, where mitochondria might be just a few percent. This is because the heart can't afford to build up lactic acid and fatigue the way your legs do after a long run. It needs to keep functioning efficiently and continuously. The heart is also remarkably adaptable. When you exercise regularly, your heart becomes more efficient. It enlarges slightly, a phenomenon called athletic heart syndrome, which is completely normal and healthy. The left ventricle wall thickens, the chambers expand, and the heart's stroke volume increases. This means it can pump more blood with each beat, so it doesn't need to beat as frequently. This is why trained athletes often have resting heart rates in the 50s or even 40s. Their hearts are simply more efficient machines. Conversely, certain diseases can cause unhealthy enlargement. When blood pressure is chronically high, the left ventricle has to work harder to push blood into the aorta. Over time, the muscle thickens, a process called hypertrophy, but not in a good way. The ventricle becomes stiffer, less compliant, and eventually less effective at pumping. The heart is adapting to the demand placed on it, but the adaptation becomes maladaptive. Let's take a moment to think about the heart's position in your body, because this is something we rarely consider. Your heart is behind your sternum, angled and rotated so that it points slightly forward and to the left. This is why we typically feel our heartbeat on the left side of our chest, and why the apex of the heart, the bottom point, taps against the inside of the chest wall with each beat. This tap is called the apical impulse, and doctors can sometimes feel it by pressing gently on the chest. The heart is surrounded by the lungs on either side, which provide cushioning. Below it sits the diaphragm, that dome-shaped muscle responsible for breathing. When you breathe in deeply, the diaphragm contracts and flattens, pushing down on the abdominal organs and creating more space in the chest cavity. This changes the pressure around the heart slightly, which is why your heart rate tends to increase a bit when you inhale and decrease when you exhale. It's a subtle effect, but it's there. The pericardium, that protective sac I mentioned earlier, has two layers, an outer fibrous layer and an inner serous layer. Between these layers is a thin space containing a few milliliters of lubricating fluid. This allows the heart to beat smoothly without friction. When this space becomes inflamed, a condition called pericarditis, the inflammation can cause sharp chest pain that worsens with breathing or lying down. And if too much fluid accumulates in this space, something called pericardial effusion, it can compress the heart and interfere with its ability to fill properly, a dangerous situation called cardiac tamponade. The anatomy of the heart is deeply interconnected with the rest of the cardiovascular system. Your arteries, branching from the aorta, become progressively smaller. Arteries to arterioles to capillaries. At the capillary level, the vessels are so narrow and the walls so thin that individual molecules can pass through. Oxygen and glucose diffuse out to cells. Carbon dioxide and metabolic waste products diffuse in. Then the blood begins its return journey. Capillaries merge into venules, venules into veins, and veins into larger veins until everything converges back at the right atrium. Veins are different from arteries in important ways. They have thinner walls because they operate under much lower pressure, and many veins, especially in the legs, contain one-way valves to prevent blood from flowing backward. This is crucial when you're standing upright. Gravity wants to pull blood down toward your feet, but those venous valves ensure it keeps moving upward back toward the heart. When you walk, the contraction of your leg muscles squeezes the veins, helping to push blood along, a mechanism sometimes called the skeletal muscle pump. The heart, for all its importance, is surprisingly humble in its presentation. It doesn't announce itself the way the brain does, with thoughts and personality. It doesn't make itself known the way the stomach does when you're hungry, or the bladder does when it's full. Most of the time, you're utterly unaware of your heart. It works in silence, in the background, a tireless servant that never complains, never protests, and never asks for recognition, unless something goes wrong. That's when the heart finally speaks up. Chest pain, shortness of breath, palpitations and fatigue. These are the heart's limited vocabulary, its ways of signaling that something isn't right. And because the heart is so critical, these signals are designed to get your attention quickly. Pain radiating down the left arm or up into the jaw, a crushing sensation in the chest, sudden breathlessness. These symptoms exist because they're effective at making us stop and seek help. Heart attacks are dramatic, but most heart disease develops slowly, over years or decades. Atherosclerosis, the buildup of cholesterol and other substances in artery walls, begins in childhood. By middle age, many people have significant plaque deposits in their coronary arteries without knowing it. The heart compensates remarkably well, often maintaining normal function even when blood flow is partially restricted. It's only when a plaque ruptures or a clot forms that the situation becomes acute. This is where understanding the heart's anatomy becomes personal. When doctors talk about a blockage in the LAD, the left anterior descending artery, they're talking about one of the most critical branches of the coronary system. The LAD supplies a large portion of the left ventricle, including the septum. A blockage here can be catastrophic, which is why the LAD is sometimes grimly nicknamed the Widowmaker. But here's something hopeful: the heart can be helped. Bypass surgery reroutes blood flow around a blockage using grafts from other blood vessels. Stents can be placed to hold open a narrowed artery. Medications can reduce the heart's workload, lower blood pressure, or prevent clots from forming. And lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, and stress management can dramatically reduce the risk of heart disease. The heart responds to how we treat it. Let's talk about the heart's size for a moment, because this is more variable than you might think. On average, an adult heart weighs about 250 to 350 grams. But heart size is influenced by body size, sex, and conditioning. Larger people tend to have larger hearts. Men typically have larger hearts than women, even after accounting for body size. And as I mentioned, athletes develop larger hearts through training. But there's a limit. A heart can become too large, too thick, or too stiff. In hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the heart muscle thickens abnormally, sometimes to the point where it obstructs blood flow out of the left ventricle. In dilated cardiomyopathy, the chambers enlarge and the walls thin, reducing the heart's pumping efficiency. These conditions can be genetic, or they can develop in response to other diseases, alcohol abuse, or certain medications. The heart's rhythm is also more complex than a simple metronome. While the SA node sets the baseline pace, your heart rate is constantly being adjusted by the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight mode, speeds the heart up and makes it contract more forcefully. The parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode, slows the heart down and gentles its contractions. This is why your heart rate increases when you're stressed or scared. It's why caffeine makes your heart race. It's why deep breathing and meditation can slow your heart rate. the heart is responsive, continuously adjusting to the demands and conditions of your body and mind. Interestingly, not all heartbeats originate from the SA node. Sometimes other clusters of cells in the atria or even the ventricles can generate their own electrical impulses. These are called ectopic beats, and they're usually harmless. You might feel them as a flutter or a skipped beat, that brief, strange sensation in your chest that makes you pause. Most people experience these occasionally. They're the heart's equivalent of a hiccup. But sometimes abnormal rhythms can be more serious. Atrial fibrillation, for instance, is a condition where the atria quiver chaotically instead of contracting smoothly. The electrical signals become disorganized, firing randomly from multiple locations. The ventricles try to keep up, but the result is an irregular, often rapid heartbeat. Blood doesn't flow efficiently out of the atria, which can lead to clot formation and increased risk of stroke. This is why atrial fibrillation is treated seriously, often with blood thinners and medications to control heart rate or restore normal rhythm. Ventricular arrhythmias are even more concerning. Ventricular tachycardia, a rapid rhythm originating in the ventricles, can quickly deteriorate into ventricular fibrillation, where the ventricles quiver uselessly instead of pumping. This is cardiac arrest. The heart is still showing electrical activity, but it's not moving blood. Without immediate intervention, CPR and defibrillation, death follows within minutes. Defibrillators work by delivering a large electrical shock to the heart, essentially resetting the electrical system. It's not about restarting the heart as movies often depict, but about stopping the chaotic, ineffective rhythm so the SA node can reassert control and restore normal coordinated contractions. Let's consider what the heart looks like across the lifespan. In a fetus, the heart begins beating around 3 weeks after conception, long before it has fully formed. At first, it's just a simple tube that twists and folds, gradually developing into the 4-chambered structure we recognize. Fetal circulation is different too. The lungs aren't yet functioning, so blood bypasses them through special shunts that close shortly after birth. When a baby is born and takes that first breath, enormous changes happen rapidly. The pressure in the chest shifts, the lungs inflate, and blood begins flowing through the pulmonary circulation for the first time. The shunts close. Within hours, the newborn circulation has completely reorganized itself. It's one of the most dramatic physiological transitions we ever undergo. As we age, the heart changes. It becomes slightly stiffer. The valves can calcify and thicken. The coronary arteries may narrow. The SA node loses some of its pacemaker cells, which is why maximum heart rate decreases with age. But a healthy heart can function remarkably well into old age. Centenarians have hearts that have beaten 3.5 billion times or more. That's an extraordinary testament to the organ's durability. There's something profound about the heart's constancy. It doesn't know about your worries, your ambitions, or your plans for tomorrow. It doesn't care if you're asleep or awake, happy or sad, young or old. It simply beats. Filling and squeezing, receiving and expelling, moving blood through your body with mechanical persistence. And yet, despite its mechanical nature, the heart is deeply connected to our emotions and our sense of self. We've always known this, haven't we? We feel our hearts race when we're anxious. We feel them flutter when we're in love. We feel them pound when we're afraid. These aren't just metaphors. They're real physiological responses. The brain and the heart are in constant communication, and emotional states genuinely affect heart function. Stress, for instance, triggers the release of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which increase heart rate and blood pressure. Chronic stress keeps the heart working harder than it needs to, contributing to wear and tear. Conversely, positive emotions, joy, contentment, and connection seem to have protective effects. There's growing evidence that social isolation and loneliness are risk factors for heart disease, while strong relationships and community involvement are protective. The heart is also remarkably sensitive to the rest of the body's health. Diabetes damages blood vessels, including the coronary arteries. Kidney disease affects blood pressure and fluid balance, putting strain on the heart. Thyroid disorders can make the heart race or slow down. Inflammatory conditions can affect the pericardium or the heart valves. The heart doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of an interconnected system, and disturbances elsewhere inevitably affect cardiac function. I find it fascinating that the heart generates its own magnetic field, measurable several feet away from the body. It's the strongest electromagnetic field produced by any organ. This field changes with each heartbeat, and some research suggests it may carry information about emotional states. Whether or not that's true, there's something poetic about the idea that our hearts broadcast their rhythms into the space around us. The heart's electrical system can be influenced externally too. Strong magnetic fields, certain toxins, and electrolyte imbalances, all of these can disrupt normal cardiac rhythms. Potassium and calcium levels, in particular, are critical. Too much or too little of either ion can cause dangerous arrhythmias. This is why people with kidney disease, which affects electrolyte balance, need to be monitored carefully. Let me tell you about heart sounds, because this is an aspect of cardiac anatomy that's often overlooked. When a doctor listens to your heart with a stethoscope, they're listening for two main sounds, lub and dub. The first sound, S1 or lub, is caused by the closing of the mitral and tricuspid valves at the start of ventricular contraction. The second sound, S2 or dub, is caused by the closing of the aortic and pulmonary valves at the start of ventricular relaxation. These sounds aren't the heart muscle contracting, they're the valves slamming shut. When valves leak or become narrowed, additional sounds, murmurs, can be heard. Skilled cardiologists can identify specific valve problems just by listening, determining not only which valve is affected, but also whether the problem is stenosis narrowing or regurgitation leaking. There are also sometimes third and fourth heart sounds, S3 and S4, which are lower pitched and heard in certain conditions. An S3 can be normal in young people, but may indicate heart failure in older adults. An S4 is never normal and suggests that the atria are having to contract more forcefully to fill a stiff ventricle. The heart's position and orientation in the chest mean that it produces different sounds depending on where the stethoscope is placed. The mitral valve is best heard at the apex on the left side of the chest. The aortic valve is best heard in the second right intercostal space, near the sternum. Each valve has its optimal listening location, and doctors are trained to move the stethoscope systematically across the chest. Now let's think about cardiac output, the total amount of blood the heart pumps per minute. This is calculated by multiplying stroke volume, the amount of blood ejected with each beat, by heart rate. A typical resting cardiac output is about 5 litres per minute, but this can be increased by either making each beat stronger, increasing stroke volume, or by increasing the heart rate volume, or by beating faster, increasing heart rate, or both. The heart's ability to increase cardiac output during exercise is called cardiac reserve. Young, healthy hearts have tremendous reserve. They can increase output 5 or 6 times above resting levels. But as we age, or if heart disease develops, cardiac reserve diminishes. The heart struggles to meet increased demands. This is why heart failure patients become short of breath with minimal exertion. Their hearts simply can't increase output enough to supply the muscles with adequate oxygen. Heart failure is a clinical syndrome, not a single disease. It occurs when the heart can't pump efficiently enough to meet the body's needs. This can happen because the heart muscle is weak, systolic dysfunction, because the heart is too stiff to fill properly, diastolic dysfunction, or because of valve problems, rhythm problems, or other structural issues. Fluid backs up into the lungs, causing shortness of breath. It pools in the legs, causing swelling. The kidneys struggle to function properly, leading to further fluid retention. Despite its name, heart failure doesn't mean the heart has stopped. It means the heart is failing to keep up with demand. And while it's a serious condition, it can often be managed with medications, lifestyle changes, and sometimes devices like pacemakers or implantable defibrillators. Let's talk about the heart's relationship with exercise, because this is where the organ's adaptability really shines. When you start exercising, several things happen almost immediately. Your muscles need more oxygen, so your heart rate increases. Your blood vessels dilate to allow more blood flow. Your breathing rate increases to bring more oxygen into your lungs. The sympathetic nervous system orchestrates this response. Within seconds of beginning exercise, your heart rate begins to climb. Blood is redistributed too. Blood flow to your digestive system decreases. Blood flow to your muscles increases dramatically. The heart doesn't pump harder to everywhere equally. The body intelligently directs blood where it's needed most. Over time, regular exercise remodels the heart in beneficial ways. The left ventricle enlarges and its walls thicken slightly, but the chamber remains compliant. The heart becomes more efficient at filling during diastole and emptying during systole. Stroke volume increases so the heart doesn't need to beat as fast to deliver the same amount of blood. This is profoundly important for health. Exercise is one of the best things you can do for your heart. It improves endothelial function, reduces blood pressure, helps control weight, improves lipid profiles, reduces inflammation, and enhances insulin sensitivity. All of these effects reduce the risk of developing coronary artery disease. The opposite is also true. Sedentary behavior is a major risk factor for heart disease. When we don't move, the heart doesn't get the stimulus to adapt and strengthen. Blood pressure tends to be higher. Weight tends to increase. Metabolic health deteriorates. The heart is designed to support an active life, and it suffers when we're inactive. I want to talk briefly about the emotional and psychological aspects of living with heart disease, because they're often overlooked in purely anatomical discussions. A heart attack is terrifying. Suddenly, an organ you've never had to think about becomes the center of your attention. You become acutely aware of every flutter, every twinge, every beat. Many people develop anxiety or even PTSD after a cardiac event. There's also the existential weight of knowing that your heart, this essential organ, has been damaged. Some people become hypervigilant, constantly monitoring their symptoms. Others go into denial, refusing to acknowledge limitations. Finding a middle path, where you take your condition seriously without letting it dominate your life, is challenging. Cardiac rehabilitation programs address this by Retry, CW, Continue, combining physical training with education and psychological support. They help people understand what their hearts can handle, gradually building confidence while also making necessary lifestyle changes. The psychological component is just as important as the physical recovery. Now let's think about the heart's relationship with breathing. These two rhythms, heartbeat and breath, are intimately connected, though they operate at different speeds. You breathe perhaps 12 to 20 times per minute. Your heart beats 60 to 100 times per minute. Yet these rhythms influence each other in subtle ways. When you inhale, the pressure in your chest cavity becomes more negative, which helps draw blood back to the heart from the veins. This increases the filling of the right side of the heart. At the same time, the expanding lungs compress the pulmonary vessels slightly, which can momentarily reduce blood flow returning to the left atrium. The net effect is that your heart rate tends to increase slightly during inhalation and decrease during exhalation. This is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it's actually a sign of good cardiovascular health. It means your autonomic nervous system is working properly, fine-tuning your heart rate breath by breath. Deep, slow breathing can be used to calm the heart. When you breathe slowly and deliberately, the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming branch, becomes more active. Heart rate decreases. Blood pressure tends to drop. This is why breathing exercises are so effective for managing stress and anxiety. You're directly influencing your heart's rhythm through your breath. Let's consider the heart in extreme conditions, because this reveals just how adaptable this organ is. At high altitudes, where oxygen is scarce, the heart initially beats faster to compensate. But over days and weeks of acclimatization, other changes occur. Red blood cell production increases, allowing the blood to carry more oxygen. The heart doesn't have to work quite as hard. Mountain climbers who spend extended periods at altitude develop these adaptations, though the process takes time. In cold environments, blood vessels in the extremities constrict to preserve core body temperature. This increases the resistance the heart must pump against, raising blood pressure. This is why shoveling snow, combining physical exertion with cold exposure, can be dangerous for people with heart disease. The heart is suddenly facing increased demand and increased resistance simultaneously. In extreme heat, the body needs to dissipate heat through the skin, so blood flow to the skin increases. This can reduce blood pressure, and the heart must beat faster to maintain adequate circulation. Dehydration compounds the problem by reducing blood volume. This is why heat stroke affects the cardiovascular system so profoundly. The heart also responds to changes in posture. When you stand up quickly, gravity pulls blood toward your legs, momentarily reducing the amount of blood returning to the heart. If your cardiovascular system is healthy, it responds within seconds. Blood vessels constrict, heart rate increases, and blood pressure is maintained. But if these reflexes are impaired by certain medications, dehydration, or autonomic dysfunction, you might feel dizzy or even faint. This is called orthostatic hypotension. Athletes and dancers who train their balance and frequently change position develop particularly responsive cardiovascular reflexes. Their hearts and blood vessels adjust almost instantaneously to postural changes. It's another example of the body's remarkable ability to adapt. Let me tell you something about the heart's energy requirements that fascinates me. The heart receives only about 5% of the cardiac output, the blood it itself is pumping, through the coronary arteries. Yet this 5% is absolutely essential. The heart cannot store energy the way muscles can. It cannot rest even briefly. It must be constantly supplied with oxygen and nutrients, beat after beat, without pause. This is why coronary artery disease is so devastating. When those small arteries narrow, the heart muscle is literally being starved. Often the first symptom is angina, chest pain or discomfort that occurs during exertion when the heart's oxygen demand increases but cannot be met because of the blocked arteries. The pain typically subsides with rest when demand decreases. But if a complete blockage occurs, the result is a heart attack and time becomes critical. Time is muscle, as emergency physicians say. The longer the heart muscle is deprived of oxygen, the more tissue dies. Modern treatments for heart attacks have improved dramatically. If a patient reaches the hospital quickly, a blocked artery can often be opened with angioplasty, a procedure where a catheter with a balloon is threaded through the blood vessels to the blockage. The balloon is inflated to compress the plaque, and often a stent is placed to keep the artery open. This can be done within an hour of arrival in many hospitals. dramatically reducing the amount of heart muscle damage. But prevention remains the best strategy. The risk factors for coronary artery disease are well known: smoking, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, chronic stress, and family history. Some of these you cannot change, others you absolutely can. The heart responds to how you live your life, day after day, year after year. Let's talk about the heart's regenerative capacity, or rather, its lack thereof. For decades, it was believed that cardiac muscle cells, cardiomyocytes, could not divide or regenerate at all in adults. The heart you were born with was the heart you'd die with, minus whatever damage accumulated along the way. Recent research has complicated this picture. It turns out that cardiomyocytes can divide, but at an extremely slow rate, perhaps 1% per year in young adults, declining to less than 0.5% per year by age 75. This means the heart has some regenerative capacity, but it's woefully inadequate to repair significant damage like that caused by a heart attack. This has spurred enormous interest in cardiac regenerative medicine. Can we stimulate the heart to produce more muscle cells? Can we transplant stem cells that differentiate into cardiomyocytes? Can we use biological scaffolds or growth factors to promote healing? These are active areas of research, and while we're not there yet, progress is being made. The possibility that we might one day be able to heal damaged hearts, rather than just managing their decline, is genuinely exciting. For now, though, the reality is that damaged heart muscle becomes scar tissue. This tissue doesn't contract. It doesn't conduct electrical signals properly. Large areas of scar can weaken the heart and disrupt its rhythm. This is why protecting the heart from injury in the first place is so crucial. The heart's anatomy also includes the coronary veins, which are often overlooked. While the coronary arteries deliver oxygenated blood to the heart muscle, the coronary veins collect the deoxygenated blood. Most of this blood drains into a large vessel called the coronary sinus, which empties directly into the right atrium. Some smaller veins, called Thebesian veins, drain directly into the heart chambers. It's a complete circulatory loop dedicated solely to keeping the heart itself alive. There's something humbling about contemplating this. The heart, which pumps blood to every other organ, must also receive blood itself. It cannot function without its own dedicated blood supply. It's simultaneously servant and master, dependent and indispensable. Let's consider the heart's size and efficiency in a comparative context. A blue whale's heart weighs about 180 kilograms, 400 pounds, and beats just 8 to 10 times per minute when the whale is diving. A hummingbird's heart weighs a fraction of a gram and beats more than 1,200 times per minute during flight. Yet both hearts are perfectly adapted to their owner's needs. The human heart sits somewhere in the middle, balancing efficiency with power and endurance with responsiveness. What's remarkable is that the fundamental architecture is the same: 4 chambers, valves to ensure one-way flow, specialized muscle tissue, an electrical conduction system. Evolution has refined this design over hundreds of millions of years, making adjustments for size and metabolic demands, but keeping the basic blueprint intact. It's a design that works. The heart is also surprisingly tolerant of minor imperfections. Small septal defects, holes in the wall between chambers, are sometimes present from birth and may never cause problems. Extra electrical pathways can exist without causing arrhythmias. Slight valve leaks are common and often benign. The heart has redundancy and reserve built in, which provides a margin of safety. But this tolerance has limits. Eventually, even minor problems can compound. A small valve leak can worsen over time, causing the heart to work harder, leading to chamber enlargement, which puts more stress on the valve, creating a vicious cycle. This is why regular checkups matter, especially as we age. Catching problems early, when they're still manageable, can prevent more serious complications later. Now let's talk about the heart transplant, because it's a testament to both the heart's anatomy and our understanding of it. The first successful human heart transplant was performed in 1967 by Dr. Christian Barnard in South Africa. The patient survived 18 days before dying of pneumonia. It was a beginning. Today, heart transplantation is a routine, though still complex procedure. The recipient's diseased heart is removed, except for the back walls of the atria where the veins connect. The donor heart is then sewn in place, connecting the aorta, pulmonary artery, and the atria. Blood flows through, and if all goes well, the new heart begins beating. What's extraordinary is that this transplanted heart will beat without any nerve connections to the recipient's brain. Remember, the heart generates its own rhythm through the SA node. It doesn't need the nervous system to tell it to beat. The recipient loses the fine-tuned control that the autonomic nervous system normally provides. The transplanted heart can't speed up quite as quickly in response to emotion or stress, but it beats nonetheless. Some recipients say they can't feel anxiety in their chest anymore because the nervous pathways that would normally make their heart race in response to fear are no longer connected. Heart transplant recipients must take immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of their lives to prevent rejection, which carries its own risks. But for people with end-stage heart failure, it can be life-saving. And the fact that we can remove one person's heart, place it in another person's chest, and have it work is a remarkable achievement. Let's think about the heart's relationship with sleep. When you sleep, your heart rate typically decreases by 10 to 20 beats per minute. Blood pressure drops. The heart gets as close to resting as it ever does. This nightly recovery period is essential for cardiovascular health. People who chronically don't get enough sleep have higher rates of hypertension, heart disease, and stroke. Sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep, is particularly hard on the heart. Each apneic episode causes oxygen levels to drop and carbon dioxide to rise. The person partially wakes, often without remembering it. The sympathetic nervous system activates, heart rate and blood pressure spike, and then the cycle repeats. Over time, this places enormous strain on the cardiovascular system. Treating sleep apnea, often with a CPAP machine that keeps the airway open, can significantly reduce cardiovascular risk. The heart also responds to our circadian rhythms. Heart attacks are more common in the morning, partly because blood pressure and clotting factors increase after waking. Sudden cardiac death also follows a circadian pattern. The body's internal clock influences cardiovascular function in ways we're still working to fully understand. Let me share something about the heart's appearance that isn't often discussed. In textbooks, the heart is usually shown clean and idealized, but a real heart, especially in an older adult, is covered in a layer of yellow fat. The coronary arteries are partially embedded in this epicardial fat. The surface can be irregular, with areas of scarring or discoloration. It doesn't look like the neat diagrams. It looks like an organ that has been working for decades, bearing the marks of its labor. This adipose tissue isn't just passive storage. Epicardial fat is metabolically active and can influence the underlying heart muscle. Excessive epicardial fat is associated with increased risk of coronary artery disease and atrial fibrillation. It's another way that overall body weight and metabolic health affect the heart. The heart's weight also changes throughout life. It's proportionally larger in infants and decreases relative to body size as we grow. In middle age, it may increase slightly again, particularly if blood pressure rises or if we gain weight. Very old hearts sometimes atrophy slightly as muscle mass is lost. The heart is not static, it's constantly remodeling in response to the demands placed upon it. Let's consider the heart's relationship with other organs. The kidneys, for instance, are intimately connected with cardiac function. The kidneys regulate blood volume and blood pressure through their control of salt and water balance. When the heart weakens and cardiac output decreases, the kidneys sense reduced blood flow and try to compensate by retaining salt and water. This increases blood volume, which should theoretically increase cardiac output. But if the heart is already failing, the extra volume just causes more congestion and swelling. It's a well-intentioned response that backfires. This cardio-renal interaction works both ways. Kidney disease causes hypertension and fluid retention, stressing the heart. Heart failure reduces kidney function. Often both organs decline together in a phenomenon called cardio-renal syndrome. Treating one requires considering the other. The liver too is affected by heart function. In right-sided heart failure, blood backs up into the veins that drain into the right atrium, including the hepatic veins from the liver. The liver becomes congested and enlarged, unable to drain properly. Over time, this can lead to liver damage and scarring, cardiac cirrhosis. The heart's failure ripples outward, affecting distant organs. Even the gut is influenced by cardiac function. Reduced cardiac output means reduced blood flow to the intestines, which can impair digestion and absorption. Some heart failure patients develop cardiac cachexia, severe weight loss and muscle wasting, partly because their compromised circulation affects their to obtain nutrients from food. The heart sits at the center of a web of interconnections. No organ functions in isolation. This is why treating heart disease requires a holistic approach, considering the whole person, not just the cardiovascular system. Let me tell you about the heart's electrical remodeling, because this is a process that occurs constantly, often without our awareness. The heart's electrical properties adapt to changing conditions. If you develop atrial fibrillation, for instance, the abnormal electrical activity causes changes in the atrial cells themselves. Ion channels, the proteins that control the flow of charged particles in and out of cells, become altered. The atria become electrically remodeled in ways that make it easier for atrial fibrillation to persist. This is why it's often said that AFib begets AFib. The longer the abnormal rhythm continues, the harder it becomes to restore normal rhythm. But electrical remodeling can also work in reverse. When normal rhythm is restored and maintained, the atria can gradually remodel back toward normal electrical properties. The heart is plastic, changeable, and responsive. Similarly, the ventricles can undergo electrical remodeling after a heart attack. The scar tissue doesn't conduct electricity normally, which can create areas of slow conduction or blocked conduction. This can set up conditions for re-entrant arrhythmias, where electrical signals circle around the scar, creating dangerous rapid rhythms. This is one reason why patients who've had heart attacks are at increased risk for sudden cardiac death, sometimes years after the initial event. As we move toward closing, I want to reflect on what it means to have a heart, not metaphorically, but literally. You carry within you this fist-sized organ that has been beating since before you were born, before you had thoughts or memories or any sense of self. Your heart was there first, working in the darkness, preparing your body for life. And it will be there until the end, beating its steady rhythm through every experience, every emotion, every success and failure, and every joy and sorrow. Your heart doesn't judge, it doesn't pause in disappointment or accelerate in pride. Well, not without appropriate physiological signals anyway. It simply continues, fulfilling its function with mechanical persistence. There's something both humbling and profound about this. We spend so much time focused on our minds, our thoughts, and our consciousness. But beneath it all, sustaining everything, is this tireless muscle, moving blood, delivering oxygen, removing waste, and keeping the whole complex system alive. Without it, consciousness itself would not be possible. The heart asks very little of us. It wants an adequate blood supply through the coronary arteries. It wants reasonable blood pressure, not too high, not too low. It wants blood that flows smoothly, neither too thick nor too thin. It wants a steady supply of oxygen, nutrients, and the right balance of electrolytes. Given these modest requirements, it will work faithfully for decades. What damages the heart is chronic excess and deprivation. Too much pressure, too much sugar, too much cholesterol, too much stress, too little movement, too little rest, too little attention to warning signs. The heart is remarkably forgiving, but it's not invincible. The choices we make, what we eat, how we move, how we manage stress, whether we smoke, how much we sleep, accumulate over time, either supporting cardiac health or undermining it. But even damaged hearts can often be helped. Weight loss, if needed, reduces the workload. Exercise strengthens the muscle and improves efficiency. Blood pressure control prevents harmful remodeling. Medications can support function, control rhythm, and prevent clots. The heart responds to positive changes, sometimes remarkably so. I think there's something hopeful in this. The heart is not a fixed entity, doomed or blessed by genetics alone. It's a living, responsive organ that adapts to how we treat it. We have more influence over our cardiac health than we sometimes realize. Not complete control, some things are beyond our influence, but meaningful agency nonetheless. As we close, I want you to take a moment and simply notice your heartbeat. You might need to be still and quiet to feel it. Maybe you'll sense it in your chest, that gentle tap against your ribs. Maybe you'll feel it in your wrist if you check your pulse. Maybe you'll just imagine it, that steady rhythm continuing beneath your awareness. That beat has been happening all night as we've been talking. It's happened through every word, every paragraph, every idea we've explored together. And it will continue after you finish listening, as you drift towards sleep, as your breathing slows and your muscles relax. Your heart will keep working through the night, moving blood, sustaining life, and asking nothing in return. In about 70 years of life, your heart will beat approximately 2.5 billion times. Each beat moves about 70 milliliters of blood. Over a lifetime, that's hundreds of millions of liters. It's almost incomprehensible. This organ, smaller than your fist, moves an ocean of blood through your vessels, reaching every cell, sustaining every thought, and powering every movement. The heart is not romantic. It doesn't understand poetry or appreciate irony. It doesn't care about your dreams or your regrets. It's a pump, mechanical and precise, operating according to the laws of physiology and physics. And yet somehow, this makes it even more worthy of wonder. Because this pump, this bundle of specialized muscle cells, electrical conduction pathways, valves and chambers, arteries and veins, makes everything else possible. Every conversation, every connection, every moment of consciousness depends on this tireless organ continuing its work. The heart is the quiet foundation beneath the noise of living. So tonight, as you rest, carry this awareness with you. Your heart is working for you right now. It has always worked for you. It will continue working for you, asking only that you treat it with a modicum of care and attention. Listen to it when it signals distress. Support it with movement and nourishment. Give it the rest it needs. The human heart is not particularly glamorous. It doesn't have the complexity of the brain or the elegance of the eye. It's just a pump, built of meat and electricity, bound by the limitations of biology. But it's your pump, and it's keeping you alive right now, in this moment, and in every moment to come. That's the boring anatomy of the human heart, beautiful in its simplicity, powerful in its persistence, essential beyond measure. May yours beat strong and steady for many years to come. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight. Rest well. Tonight we're going to explore one of the most elegant systems in your entire body. It's a system that never sleeps, even when you do. It's working right now as you listen to these words, making thousands of tiny adjustments every minute. Slowing your heart when you need to rest, quickening your breath when you need to run, digesting your dinner while you focus on other things. It's called the autonomic nervous system, and it's the quiet conductor of your body's symphony. Let's begin with a simple truth. You are, right now, breathing. You didn't decide to breathe just then. You didn't consciously tell your lungs to expand or your diaphragm to contract. It simply happened. That's the autonomic nervous system at work. The word autonomic comes from the Greek words for self and law. It means self-governing. This system governs itself, running in the background of your awareness, like the operating system of a computer, managing everything you don't need to consciously control. Your autonomic nervous system has two main branches, and they work in beautiful opposition, like two dancers moving in complementary rhythms. There's the sympathetic nervous system, which prepares you for action, for urgency, for survival. And there's the parasympathetic nervous system, which guides you into rest, digestion, healing, and sleep. Together they create balance, they create homeostasis, they keep you alive. But tonight we're most interested in what happens when the sun goes down, when the day's demands fade, when your body knows somehow that it's time to shift gears, time to move from doing to being, from tension to release, from sympathetic to parasympathetic. This shift is not a light switch, it's a gentle dimmer, a gradual transition orchestrated by signals traveling through your nervous system, messages written in the language of neurotransmitters and hormones, all working to bring you into the state we call rest. The architecture of the autonomic nervous system is worth understanding because it helps us see why rest doesn't always come easily. Why sometimes, even when we're exhausted, sleep feels elusive. The sympathetic nervous system originates in the middle portion of your spinal cord, in the thoracic and lumbar regions. When it activates, it sends signals through a chain of ganglia, clusters of nerve cell bodies that run alongside your spine like a string of pearls. These signals then travel to your organs, your blood vessels, your pupils, and your sweat glands. The parasympathetic system, by contrast, has a more scattered arrangement. Much of it flows through a single wandering nerve called the vagus nerve. Vagus means wanderer in Latin, and this nerve truly wanders. It emerges from your brainstem and meanders down through your neck, into your chest, touching your heart and your lungs, and continuing into your abdomen to influence your stomach, your intestines, and your liver. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body, and it's the primary messenger of calm. When evening arrives, when the light outside begins to fade, your body receives cues. These cues are both external and internal. The quality of light changes. The temperature drops slightly. Your activity level naturally decreases. Your brain, specifically a tiny region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, nestled in your hypothalamus, acts as your master clock. It receives information about light and darkness from special cells in your retina, and it begins to orchestrate the shift toward night. This shift involves the release of melatonin from your pineal gland, a small pinecone-shaped structure deep in your brain. Melatonin is often called the sleep hormone, though it's more accurate to call it the darkness hormone. Its levels rise as night falls, and while it doesn't force you to sleep, it opens the door. It makes sleep possible. It prepares the way. But melatonin is just one player in a much larger ensemble. The real transformation happens when your parasympathetic nervous system begins to take the lead. Think of the sympathetic system as having had control during the day. It kept you alert during your morning meeting. It quickened your pulse when you had to hurry across the street. It sharpened your focus when you needed to solve a problem or meet a deadline. But now, as evening deepens, the parasympathetic system starts to whisper, "It's okay. You can let go now. I've got this." The first thing you might notice, if you pay attention, is your breathing. During the day, when the sympathetic system is more active, your breathing tends to be shallow and centered in your chest. It's efficient for action, for being ready. But as the parasympathetic system engages, your breathing naturally deepens. It moves lower, into your belly. Your diaphragm, that dome-shaped muscle beneath your lungs, begins to do more of the work. Each breath becomes slower and more complete. This isn't just relaxing, it's a signal. Your body reads this slower, deeper breathing as a sign that safety has arrived, that the threat has passed. Your heart responds too. Throughout the day, your heart rate varies depending on demand. The sympathetic system can push it higher, faster, preparing you for exertion. The heart of someone about to give a presentation beats differently than the heart of someone sitting quietly with a book. But as night comes, the vagus nerve releases acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that acts like a gentle hand on your heart, slowing it down. Your heart rate decreases, the time between beats lengthens. This is called increased heart rate variability, and it's actually a sign of health. A heart that can slow down, that can adapt, that can rest, is a resilient heart. Blood flow changes as well. During sympathetic activation, blood is directed toward your muscles, your brain, and the areas that need it for action. Your blood vessels in your skin and digestive system constrict, because digesting lunch or cooling down aren't priorities when you're trying to catch a bus or finish a project before a deadline. But when the parasympathetic system takes over, those priorities reverse. Blood vessels in your digestive tract dilate. Your stomach and intestines receive more blood flow. Digestion, which may have been sluggish during a stressful day, now proceeds more efficiently. This is why eating a heavy meal right before bed can sometimes feel uncomfortable. Your parasympathetic system is ready to help you digest, yes, but it's also trying to prepare you for sleep. There's a conflict of priorities. Your body is being asked to do two significant things at once: digest a large meal and initiate sleep. It can manage both, but it's not ideal. A lighter evening meal, eaten a few hours before bed, allows digestion to proceed without competing with sleep's arrival. Your pupils change too, in a small but telling way. In bright light or during sympathetic activation, your pupils dilate to let in more light, to see more clearly, and to scan for threats or opportunities. But as the parasympathetic system engages, your pupils constrict. They become smaller. This is part of the general theme of parasympathetic activity: narrowing, focusing inward, conserving, and resting. Your body is no longer scanning the horizon. It's turning inward, attending to maintenance and repair. Even your saliva changes. The sympathetic system produces saliva that's thick and sparse, the kind that makes your mouth feel dry when you're nervous before speaking in public. The parasympathetic system produces saliva that's more watery and abundant. This is better for digestion, for breaking down food, and for comfort. It's one of countless small adjustments happening beneath your awareness, all designed to shift you from action to rest. Temperature regulation plays a fascinating role in this evening transition. Your core body temperature naturally drops as night approaches. This isn't a dramatic plunge, but a gentle decline of about 1 degree Celsius. This cooling is necessary for sleep. Your brain actually needs to be slightly cooler to initiate and maintain sleep effectively. The parasympathetic system helps facilitate this by directing blood flow toward your extremities, your hands and feet, allowing heat to radiate away from your core. This is why many people find that having cold hands and feet makes falling asleep difficult, while warming them with socks, or by placing them outside the covers, or by soaking them in warm water before bed, can actually help. When your hands and feet are warm, blood vessels there dilate, heat escapes, and your core temperature can drop more easily. It's a paradox that makes perfect sense once you understand the mechanism. You warm your extremities to cool your core. The muscles throughout your body also receive the parasympathetic message. During the day, especially during stress, you might hold tension in your shoulders, your jaw, or your neck. The sympathetic system keeps these muscles slightly contracted, ready for action. This was useful when action meant running from predators or climbing trees. It's less useful when the threat is an overdue bill or a difficult conversation you're dreading. But now, as evening comes, the parasympathetic system encourages release. Muscles receive fewer signals to contract. Tension diminishes. This is why stretching or gentle movement in the evening can feel so satisfying. It's working with your body's natural inclination toward relaxation. Your gut, that long winding tube that processes everything you eat, is deeply influenced by the autonomic nervous system. In fact, your gut has its own nervous system, called the enteric nervous system, which contains more neurons than your spinal cord. Some scientists call it the second brain, though it doesn't think in the way your skull brain thinks. But it's not independent. It's in constant communication with your autonomic nervous system through the vagus nerve and other pathways. When the parasympathetic system is active, your gut becomes more active too. Peristalsis, those wave-like contractions that move food through your intestines, increases. Digestive enzymes are secreted. Nutrients are absorbed. The lining of your intestines, which regenerates faster than almost any other tissue in your body, does much of its repair work during parasympathetic dominance. This is why the parasympathetic system is sometimes called rest and digest. It's not just about rest. It's about the essential work of nourishment, of breaking down and absorbing, of building and repairing. There's a beautiful feedback loop here. When your gut is working well, when digestion proceeds smoothly, it sends signals back up the vagus nerve to your brain, essentially saying, all is well. Things are as they should be. This contributes to a sense of calm and of safety. Conversely, when digestion is disrupted, when your gut is uncomfortable or inflamed, those signals change. Your brain receives information that something might be wrong, and it becomes harder to fully relax. This is one reason why gut health and mental calm are so closely linked. They're in constant conversation through the vagus nerve. The immune system also follows this day-night rhythm, guided in part by the autonomic nervous system. During the day, your immune system is more focused on surveillance, on patrolling for threats, and on responding to immediate challenges. But at night, during parasympathetic dominance, your immune system shifts toward repair and memory consolidation. This is when immune cells are most active in learning from the day's exposures, in cataloguing new threats, and in preparing for future encounters. This is why sleep is so crucial for immunity, and why people who are chronically sleep deprived get sick more easily. Their immune systems never get the full parasympathetic rest period they need to learn and strengthen. Let's talk about the vagus nerve in more detail, because it's central to understanding how your body shifts into rest. This remarkable nerve has both sensory and motor functions. It carries information from your organs up to your brain, telling your brain about your heart rate, your gut activity, and your lung expansion, and it carries commands from your brain down to your organs, instructing them to slow, to rest, and to repair. It's a two-way highway of communication, constantly busy with traffic in both directions. The vagus nerve has two main branches, and they serve slightly different functions. The ventral vagal branch is the newer evolutionary development found primarily in mammals. It's connected to social engagement, to the muscles of your face and throat that allow you to make expressions, to speak, and to vocalize. When this branch is active, you feel safe, connected, and calm. You can engage with others without feeling threatened. You can listen and respond. This is the state that promotes rest and healing. This is the state where genuine connection happens. The dorsal vagal branch is older and more primitive. It's the branch we share with reptiles. When it activates strongly, it can lead to a shutdown response, a kind of freeze or collapse that happens when a threat is overwhelming and escape seems impossible. Think of an animal playing dead. This is less relevant to our nightly transition into sleep, but it's worth knowing about because it helps explain why severe trauma can disrupt sleep. When the nervous system has learned to associate stillness with danger, when shutting down feels threatening rather than restful, sleep becomes complicated. For most of us, though, the evening transition involves the gentle activation of that ventral vagal pathway. This is the branch that allows us to feel safe enough to let go, to trust that we can close our eyes and drift away, and that we'll be okay, that the world will still be here when we wake, that we don't need to maintain vigilance through the night. One of the most elegant aspects of the parasympathetic system is that you can consciously influence it. Unlike many autonomic functions that remain entirely outside your control, you can't decide to lower your blood pressure or secrete more insulin. Certain practices can activate your parasympathetic response. Slow, deep breathing is one of the most powerful. When you breathe slowly and deeply, especially when you extend your exhalation so it's longer than your inhalation, you stimulate the vagus nerve. Your brain receives the signal that danger has passed, that predators are not near, and that you're safe. And it responds by deepening the parasympathetic state. This is the physiological basis for countless relaxation practices across cultures and centuries. Prayer, meditation, breathing exercises, chanting and singing, all of these involve slowing and deepening the breath, and all of them activate the parasympathetic nervous system. They work not because of belief or willpower or magic, but because of biology. Because of the vagus nerve's intimate connection between breath and brain. When you slow your breath, you slow your heart. When you slow your heart, you calm your mind. It's a loop, and you can enter it at any point. Gentle touch and warmth also activate the parasympathetic system. This is why a warm bath in the evening can be so effective at promoting sleep. The warmth relaxes muscles and dilates blood vessels, and when you emerge from the bath into cooler air, your core temperature drops. Exactly what your body needs for sleep. It's why weighted blankets can feel comforting to some people. The gentle pressure stimulates touch receptors that signal safety to the nervous system. Why stroking a pet's fur can be calming. Why a gentle massage can make you drowsy. All of these are signals to your nervous system that it's safe to rest. Sound plays a role too. Harsh, sudden noises activate the sympathetic system. A car alarm, a door slamming, a shout, these things jolt you into alertness, into readiness for potential threat. Your heart rate jumps, your muscles tense, your eyes widen. But soft, rhythmic, predictable sounds, rainfall, ocean waves, gentle music, a calm human voice, These can support parasympathetic activation. They become part of the backdrop of safety that allows your nervous system to let go. They're the opposite of alarm. They're the sound of a world that's peaceful, at least for now. Light, as we mentioned earlier, is perhaps the most powerful environmental cue. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus responds to the presence or absence of blue light in particular. Blue wavelengths, with their short frequency, are abundant in daylight and signal to your brain that it's time to be awake, to be alert, and to engage with the world. When blue light is absent, melatonin production increases and the parasympathetic shift towards sleep becomes easier. Your brain trusts that night has truly arrived. This is the challenge of our modern world. We are surrounded by blue light in the evening, from phones, tablets, computers, televisions, and even LED bulbs. Our brains are receiving mixed messages. The clock says it's 9 in the evening, but the light says it's noon. The calendar says it's winter, but the light says it's summer. The result is that our natural transition into parasympathetic rest is delayed, disrupted, or incomplete. Melatonin production is suppressed. The sympathetic system maintains more influence than it should at this hour. Some people find that dimming lights in the evening, using warm-toned bulbs with less blue spectrum, or wearing blue light blocking glasses can help. Others create a digital sunset, turning off screens an hour or two before bed. These aren't just nice ideas or wellness trends. They're working with your biology, removing obstacles that prevent your autonomic nervous system from doing what it evolved to do. They're acknowledging that your nervous system is ancient and it doesn't know what a smartphone is. It only knows light and dark, and it makes decisions based on that information. There's something poetic about the fact that your nervous system still follows ancient rhythms. For most of human history, for hundreds of thousands of years, the day ended when the sun set. There were no electric lights, no screens, and no reasons to extend wakefulness except perhaps firelight and conversation. Your parasympathetic system evolved in that world, tuned to the natural cycle of light and dark, activity and rest. It expects the day to end when darkness falls. It's designed for that rhythm. When we honor those rhythms, even imperfectly, our nervous system responds with gratitude. Sleep comes more easily. Rest feels more restorative. We wake feeling more ourselves, more capable, and more present. When we fight those rhythms, burning the candle at both ends, flooding ourselves with light and stimulation at all hours, and drinking coffee at 5 in the afternoon, our nervous system becomes confused. The boundaries between sympathetic and parasympathetic blur. We become tired but wired, exhausted but unable to fully rest. We lie in bed with racing thoughts, tense muscles, and an alert mind in an exhausted body. The hormones that govern stress and rest follow a daily rhythm too, closely coordinated with the autonomic nervous system. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, though it does many other things, peaks in the early morning, helping you wake and face the day. It gradually declines throughout the day, reaching its lowest point late at night. This decline in cortisol is part of what allows the parasympathetic system to dominate in the evening. It's one less signal pushing you toward alertness and action. But chronic stress disrupts this pattern. When you're under constant pressure, when your brain perceives an ongoing threat, cortisol levels remain elevated into the evening. The sympathetic nervous system stays activated when it should be quieting down. The result is that familiar feeling of being unable to turn off your thoughts at bedtime, of lying awake with your mind racing and your body tense, even though you desperately want to sleep. You're tired, genuinely tired, but you can't access rest. This isn't a failure of willpower. It's not a personal weakness or a character flaw. It's your autonomic nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do, keeping you alert in the face of perceived threat. The problem is that modern threats aren't the kind we can run from or fight. They're deadlines and bills and difficult conversations and worries about the future. They're abstract and ongoing, and our nervous system wasn't designed for them. It was designed for immediate physical threats that could be resolved through action, run or fight, then rest. But we can't run from our mortgage or fight our anxiety about tomorrow's presentation. So the sympathetic system stays active, waiting for resolution that never comes. Breaking this pattern requires more than just wanting to sleep. It requires actively supporting your parasympathetic nervous system, creating an environment, both external and internal, where rest feels safe, where your body can receive the message that the day is truly done, that vigilance can ease, and that it's okay to let go. This might mean addressing the sources of stress when possible. It definitely means creating rituals and practices that signal to your nervous system that night has arrived and safety is present. One fascinating aspect of the parasympathetic response is its social dimension. Humans are deeply social creatures, and our nervous systems are tuned to each other in ways we're only beginning to understand. When you're in the presence of someone who is calm, whose parasympathetic system is active, whose breathing is slow, and whose body is relaxed, your nervous system tends to synchronize. You become calmer too. This happens automatically, beneath conscious awareness, through mechanisms we don't fully understand, but can definitely observe. This is called co-regulation, and it's why a soothing presence can be so powerful. Why a calm parent can settle an anxious child just by being near, just by breathing slowly and speaking softly. Why talking to a trusted friend can help you feel grounded even when your thoughts have been spinning. Why even listening to a calm voice, like the one you're hearing now, can help activate your parasympathetic response. Your nervous system is reading cues from the voice, its pace, its rhythm, its tone, and adjusting accordingly. The opposite is also true. If you're surrounded by people who are anxious or agitated, whose sympathetic systems are activated, your sympathetic system is likely to activate as well. Your nervous system reads the room, constantly scanning for cues about whether it's safe to relax or necessary to stay alert. This happens through subtle shifts in facial expression, tone of voice, body posture, and even the pace of breathing. We're constantly broadcasting our autonomic state to each other, and we're constantly receiving those broadcasts from others. This is one reason why the environment you create for sleep matters so much. If your bedroom is a place of calm, of quiet, of comfort, your nervous system receives consistent messages that this is a place of rest. The room itself becomes a cue for parasympathetic activation. If your bedroom is also your office, your entertainment center, your eating area, and the place where you have difficult phone conversations, the signals become mixed. Your brain doesn't know whether to prepare for work or sleep, for alertness or rest. The autonomic nervous system thrives on consistency, on clear signals, and on knowing what's expected. As you lie in bed at night, ideally in a cool, dark, quiet room, your parasympathetic nervous system is orchestrating an intricate sequence of events. Your heart continues to slow, settling into its nighttime rhythm. Your breathing deepens and becomes more regular, more rhythmic. Your muscles progressively relax, sometimes with little twitches or jerks as they release accumulated tension. Those twitches, called hypnic jerks, are completely normal. They're thought to be a side effect of the motor system powering down, of the transition from wakefulness to sleep. Your eyes begin to move more slowly behind your closed lids, then hardly at all. The external world fades in importance. Internal sensations become more prominent. The weight of the blanket, the softness of the pillow, and the rhythm of your breath. Your sense of time begins to blur. Minutes might feel like seconds or hours. This is all normal, all part of the descent into sleep. Your brain waves change. During wakefulness, especially focused wakefulness, your brain produces beta waves, fast, active electrical patterns associated with thinking, analyzing, and planning. As you relax, as the parasympathetic system takes over, these shift to alpha waves, slower, more rhythmic, and associated with calm wakefulness and meditation. Then, as sleep approaches, you enter theta wave territory, even slower, the brain waves of drowsiness and light sleep, of that hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping, where thoughts become dreamlike and strange. The transition from wakefulness to sleep is gradual, not sudden. You don't fall off a cliff into sleep, despite the phrase falling asleep. You descend a gentle slope with the parasympathetic system guiding each step. First comes stage 1 sleep, a light doze where you might still be somewhat aware of your surroundings, where a small sound might bring you back to wakefulness. Your muscles are relaxed, but not completely. Your breathing is slower, but not yet at its deepest. Then stage 2, where you become more detached, more removed from the external world. This is where you spend much of the night. Here, sleep spindles appear in your brain waves, brief bursts of activity that are thought to help consolidate memories and protect sleep from disruption. Your body temperature drops further. Your heart rate slows more. You're truly asleep now, though still in relatively light sleep. Then comes slow wave sleep, also called deep sleep or stage 3 sleep. This is where the parasympathetic dominance is most complete. Your blood pressure drops to its lowest point of the day. Your heart rate is slow and steady, with high variability, exactly what healthy parasympathetic function looks like. Your muscles are deeply relaxed. Your brain waves are slow and synchronized, rolling through your cortex like ocean swells. Growth hormone is released, facilitating repair and regeneration of tissues. Your immune system does its most important maintenance work. This is the most restorative sleep, the sleep your body needs for physical recovery. Later in the night, you cycle into REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, where dreams are most vivid and bizarre. Here, something interesting happens with your autonomic nervous system. Your brain becomes quite active, in some ways as active as during wakefulness. Your eyes dart rapidly behind your closed lids, scanning a dream landscape. But your body becomes paralyzed, a safety mechanism called REM atonia that prevents you from acting out your dreams. This is a unique state where the brain is busy, but the body is profoundly still, and the autonomic nervous system maintains this delicate balance. Your heart rate and breathing become more variable during REM sleep, less regular than in slow wave sleep. Sometimes they quicken with dream content. If you're dreaming of running, your heart might race. If you're dreaming of something peaceful, it might be slow. Your autonomic nervous system responds to the dream as if it were real, which tells us something interesting about the relationship between mind and body. The nervous system doesn't always distinguish between actual experience and vividly imagined experience. Both can trigger autonomic responses. Throughout the night, you cycle between these stages, with each cycle lasting about 90 minutes. You move from light sleep to deep sleep to REM, then back to light sleep, over and over. As the night progresses, you spend less time in deep sleep and more time in REM sleep. The first half of the night is more restorative for the body. The second half is more important for the mind, for processing emotions, for consolidating memories, and for creative problem solving. This is all orchestrated by complex interactions between different brain regions, hormones, neurotransmitters, and your autonomic nervous system. The suprachiasmatic nucleus keeps time, coordinating with melatonin production. The brainstem regulates the transitions between sleep stages. The amygdala processes emotions during dreams. The prefrontal cortex, usually so active during wakefulness, becomes quiet, which is why dreams often have their peculiar logic, or lack of logic. And through it all, the autonomic nervous system maintains the balance, ensuring that your heart keeps beating, your lungs keep breathing, and your body keeps living while your conscious mind is elsewhere. When morning approaches, the process reverses. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus begins to respond to increasing light, even before you wake, even through your closed eyelids. Cortisol levels start to rise, preparing you for the day ahead. Your core body temperature begins to increase. Your sympathetic nervous system gradually becomes more active. Sleep becomes lighter. You spend more time in stage 1 and 2 sleep, and less in deep sleep and REM. You eventually wake, ideally naturally, when your body has completed its restorative work and the sympathetic system is ready to engage with the day. This is the ideal pattern, the one your body wants to follow. But modern life often disrupts it. Alarm clocks jolt us awake during deep sleep, forcing a sympathetic activation before the body is ready. We go to bed at different times each night, confusing our suprachiasmatic nucleus about when to release melatonin. We flood ourselves with light in the evening and darkness in the morning, giving our nervous system exactly the wrong signals. We consume caffeine late in the day and alcohol before bed, both of which interfere with the autonomic nervous system's natural rhythm. Caffeine is an adenosine antagonist. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that accumulates throughout the day as you use energy, and it promotes sleepiness. It's one of the signals that tells your body you've been awake long enough and rest is needed. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, preventing adenosine from doing its job. When you drink coffee late in the afternoon, even if you don't feel jittery, even if it doesn't seem to affect you, you're preventing your parasympathetic system from receiving one of its important evening signals. The caffeine doesn't leave your system quickly. It has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours, meaning that half of the caffeine from your afternoon coffee is still in your system at bedtime, still blocking adenosine and still interfering with sleep. Alcohol is tricky because it initially seems to help. It's a sedative and it can make you drowsy and help you fall asleep faster. But it disrupts the architecture of sleep, particularly the later stages. It suppresses REM sleep early in the night, and as your body metabolizes the alcohol, there's often a rebound effect. Your sympathetic system becomes more active in the second half of the night as your body deals with the byproducts of alcohol metabolism. The result is fragmented, less restorative sleep, even if you're not fully waking up. You might sleep for 8 hours but wake feeling unrefreshed because you spent less time in the deep, restorative stages. Understanding all of this, how your autonomic nervous system works, what supports it, and what disrupts it, can change how you approach your evenings and your sleep. It's not about perfection. It's not about following rigid rules or berating yourself when you can't sleep. It's about working with your biology rather than against it. Make choices when you can that support your parasympathetic system, that help your body recognize when the day is done. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, sleep doesn't come easily. You've done everything right. You've dimmed the lights, turned off screens, eaten lightly, and kept the room cool. But your mind races anyway. Your body feels tense. The harder you try to sleep, the more wakeful you become. This is a sympathetic response. Your effort, your striving, your worry about not sleeping, all of this activates the very system that needs to quiet down for sleep to arrive. You're trying to force something that cannot be forced. The paradox is that you cannot make yourself sleep. You cannot command your parasympathetic system to activate through sheer willpower. Sleep is something that happens to you, not something you do. What you can do is create conditions where it's more likely to happen. You can remove obstacles, you can signal safety, you can invite rest without demanding it. This is a subtle but important shift in approach. This is where practices like progressive muscle relaxation come in. You systematically tense and release different muscle groups, your feet, your calves, your thighs, moving up through your body. The tensing part seems counterintuitive, but it helps you notice the difference between tension and relaxation. And the releasing part encourages overall relaxation and activates the parasympathetic response. You're giving your muscles permission to let go, or body scan meditation, where you bring gentle awareness to each part of your body, noticing sensation without judgment, without trying to change anything, just noticing. This helps shift you out of thinking mode and into sensing mode, a more parasympathetic state. Your attention moves from your thoughts, which might be racing, anxious, focused on tomorrow's worries, to your body, which is here, now, resting. Or the practice of simply focusing on your breath, not changing it, just observing it, watching it slow naturally, noticing the pause between inhale and exhale, that moment of stillness. This observation itself can be calming, can help activate the vagus nerve, and can support the shift toward rest. When your mind wanders, and it will constantly, you gently bring it back to the breath. Not as a failure, just as part of the practice. The autonomic nervous system responds to your mental state as well as your physical state. When your thoughts are anxious, catastrophic, and focused on threat, replaying an argument, worrying about all the things that could go wrong, imagining worst-case scenarios, your sympathetic system activates. Your brain doesn't distinguish well between actual threat and imagined threat. Both trigger similar responses. When your thoughts are calm, accepting, and focused on safety and gratitude, remembering good moments from the day, feeling thankful for simple things, and accepting that tomorrow will bring what it brings, your parasympathetic system is more likely to engage. This doesn't mean you should never worry or that anxious thoughts are wrong. They're part of being human, part of how we plan and prepare and protect ourselves. But it does mean that learning to work with your thoughts, to observe them without getting completely swept up in them, can help your nervous system find balance. This is one reason why mindfulness practices, when done consistently over time, tend to improve sleep. They train your nervous system to spend more time in parasympathetic states. They help you develop the ability to notice thoughts without being controlled by them, and to observe anxiety without becoming overwhelmed by it. The practice isn't about eliminating thoughts or achieving some perfect blank mind. It's about changing your relationship with your thoughts, seeing them as mental events rather than absolute truths, and this shift has real effects on autonomic function. Social connection, as we mentioned earlier, also influences your autonomic balance. Loneliness and social isolation tend to activate the sympathetic system. They're perceived as threats by your ancient brain, which knows that humans need each other to survive. For most of human history, being alone meant being vulnerable. Being part of a group meant safety. That's still written into your nervous system. Conversely, feeling connected, feeling part of a community, and feeling seen and valued activate the parasympathetic system. This is why reaching out, even briefly, to someone you care about can sometimes help you feel calmer, more grounded, and more ready for rest. Physical contact is particularly powerful when it comes from a trusted source. Safe, consensual touch, a hug, holding hands, a gentle massage, directly stimulates parasympathetic pathways. This is why infants who are held and touched regularly develop better stress regulation systems. The same principle applies throughout life. Touch tells your nervous system at a fundamental level that you're not alone, that you're safe, and that someone cares. For people who live alone or don't have regular physical contact, this can be challenging. Pets. Retry. CW. Continue. Edit. Can sometimes provide that connection, that touch. The act of stroking a cat or dog, feeling the warmth of their body and their steady breathing can activate your parasympathetic system in similar ways. Exercise, interestingly, activates your sympathetic system during the activity, but often leads to a stronger parasympathetic response afterward. This is called parasympathetic rebound. After exertion, your body shifts into recovery mode and the parasympathetic system becomes dominant. Your heart rate slows, your breathing deepens, and your muscles relax. This is why regular exercise, especially earlier in the day, tends to improve sleep. It strengthens both branches of your autonomic nervous system and helps them work together more effectively. It teaches your body to shift smoothly from activation to rest, from sympathetic to parasympathetic. But exercise too close to bedtime can be counterproductive for some people. The sympathetic activation can linger, making it harder to fall asleep. Your core temperature rises during exercise, and it needs time to drop back down before sleep becomes easy. Your adrenaline levels increase, and they don't dissipate instantly. For most people, finishing vigorous exercise at least 3 or 4 hours before bed works better, allowing time for that parasympathetic rebound to occur, for the body to fully shift into rest mode. There are individual differences in all of this, of course. Some people have naturally more reactive sympathetic systems. They startle easily, their heart rate jumps quickly in response to stress, and they feel anxiety more intensely. This isn't a weakness or a flaw, it's temperament, partly genetic, partly shaped by early experiences. Others have more dominant parasympathetic systems. They're naturally calm, slow to stress, and quick to relax. They can fall asleep anywhere, anytime. Most of us fall somewhere in between, and our position on this spectrum can shift based on life circumstances, health, age, and experience. Trauma can fundamentally alter autonomic balance. When someone experiences severe threat, when their nervous system is pushed beyond its capacity to cope, when fight or flight isn't possible and they freeze or collapse, the autonomic system can become dysregulated. The sympathetic system might become overactive, constantly scanning for danger, interpreting neutral events as threatening, and making relaxation difficult or impossible. Or the dorsal vagal system might activate too easily, leading to shutdown and disconnection, to feeling numb or absent even when you want to be present. Healing from trauma often involves helping the nervous system recalibrate, helping it learn that the threat has passed, that rest is safe again, and that the world isn't always dangerous. This is delicate work, usually requiring professional support, because you can't just think your way out of a dysregulated nervous system. You have to feel your way through it, gradually building new experiences of safety and new evidence that parasympathetic states are possible and sustainable. Trauma lives in the body, in the autonomic nervous system, and healing happens there too. Chronic illness can also affect autonomic function in significant ways. Conditions like diabetes can damage nerve fibers over time, including those of the autonomic system. This can lead to problems with blood pressure regulation, with heart rate variability, with digestion, and with temperature control. Heart disease can affect the nerves that regulate cardiac function. Autoimmune disorders can attack nerve tissue. Supporting autonomic health becomes an important part of managing these conditions, though it's often overlooked in favor of more obvious symptoms. Aging affects the autonomic nervous system too. Parasympathetic function tends to decline with age, which is one reason why older adults often sleep less deeply and wake more frequently during the night. The sympathetic system may become relatively more active, contributing to higher blood pressure and increased inflammation. the flexibility of the system decreases. The ability to shift smoothly from sympathetic to parasympathetic and back becomes less efficient. But this isn't inevitable or uniform. People who maintain healthy lifestyles, who manage stress well, who stay socially connected, and who remain physically active often maintain better autonomic function as they age. The nervous system remains somewhat plastic, somewhat adaptable throughout life. There's emerging research on what's called heart rate variability, or HRV, as a measure of autonomic function and overall health. Heart rate variability refers to the variation in time between heartbeats. You might think a healthy heart beats like a metronome, perfectly regular, but actually, a healthy heart varies its rhythm slightly from beat to beat. This variation is driven largely by the autonomic nervous system, particularly by the parasympathetic branch through the vagus nerve. High heart rate variability indicates that your autonomic nervous system is flexible, responsive, and able to adjust quickly to changing demands. It's associated with better cardiovascular health, better stress resilience, and better emotional regulation. Low heart rate variability suggests a more rigid system, one that's less able to adapt, and it's associated with various health problems. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep, your heart rate variability should increase, reflecting strong parasympathetic activity. This is one measure of whether you're truly resting or whether your sympathetic system is maintaining inappropriate influence. You can actually measure your own heart rate variability now with various devices and apps. Some people find this useful for understanding their stress levels, their recovery from exercise, and their sleep quality. But there's also a risk of becoming too focused on the numbers, of adding stress by worrying about your HRV, which would be counterproductive. The technology is a tool, not a judgment. Your autonomic nervous system is doing its best with the circumstances it's been given. Let's consider how different life stages and circumstances affect the nighttime shift into parasympathetic rest. New parents, for instance, face a particular challenge. Their sleep is fragmented by the needs of an infant. Just as they're descending into deep sleep, into full parasympathetic rest, they're jolted awake by crying. The sympathetic system activates instantly, as it should, because their baby needs them. But then it's hard to return to sleep. The sympathetic activation lingers. The parent lies awake, listening for the next cry, unable to fully let go. Over time, this pattern can condition the nervous system to expect interruption, to remain somewhat vigilant even during sleep. The parasympathetic system never fully engages. Parents might feel chronically exhausted, running on a mix of adrenaline and determination. The lack of deep, uninterrupted parasympathetic rest affects everything: mood, immune function, cognitive performance, and emotional regulation. This is why sleep deprivation in new parents is so challenging. It's not just about feeling tired, it's about the autonomic nervous system being unable to complete its essential nighttime work. Shift workers face a different but equally significant challenge. They're being asked to sleep during the day when their suprachiasmatic nucleus is receiving light signals that say, "Be awake." They're being asked to stay alert at night when every system in their body is trying to shift into parasympathetic rest. This chronic misalignment between the internal clock and external demands takes a toll. Shift workers have higher rates of cardiovascular disease, metabolic problems, digestive issues, and depression, all conditions linked to autonomic dysfunction and disrupted circadian rhythms. The body can adapt to shift work to some degree, but it's never completely comfortable with it. The autonomic nervous system evolved over millions of years to follow the sun. We've only been working night shifts for about a century, an evolutionary blink. The system simply hasn't had time to adjust to this radical change in behavior. This doesn't mean shift workers are doomed, but it does mean they need to be especially intentional about supporting their parasympathetic system during their designated sleep times, creating darkness, quiet, and all the conditions for rest, even when the world outside is awake. People going through menopause often experience sleep disruption related to autonomic changes. Hot flashes are essentially sudden sympathetic activations. Blood vessels dilate rapidly, core temperature rises, heart rate increases, and sweating occurs. These can happen multiple times during the night, jolting someone out of sleep just as they're settling into parasympathetic rest. The hormonal changes of menopause affect the autonomic nervous system's stability, its ability to maintain steady states. Over time, with patience and often with medical support, most people adjust. The autonomic system finds a new equilibrium and sleep improves. Anxiety disorders represent a condition where the sympathetic system is chronically overactive, where the threat detection system is too sensitive. People with anxiety might perceive danger where none exists, might interpret neutral events as threatening, and might spend much of their day in a state of sympathetic activation. When evening comes, their nervous system doesn't easily shift into parasympathetic rest because it's still on high alert, still scanning, still worried. Treating anxiety often involves helping the nervous system recalibrate its threat detection, learning through experience that most situations are safer than they feel. Depression, interestingly, sometimes involves too much parasympathetic activity, particularly the dorsal vagal shutdown response. People with depression might feel numb, disconnected, and exhausted in a way that's different from healthy tiredness. They might sleep excessively, but wake unrefreshed because it's not the restorative parasympathetic rest of healthy sleep. It's more like a shutdown, a withdrawal. Treating depression often involves reactivating appropriate sympathetic engagement with life, while also supporting healthy parasympathetic rest. These are simplifications, of course. Mental health is complex, and the autonomic nervous system is just one piece of the picture. But understanding the role of autonomic function can help make sense of symptoms that might otherwise seem mysterious. Why does anxiety make sleep so hard? Because your sympathetic system won't quiet down. Why does depression make everything feel heavy and exhausting? Partly because your nervous system has shifted too far towards shutdown. Consider the impact of medications on the autonomic nervous system and sleep. Many medications affect autonomic function, sometimes intentionally, sometimes as a side effect. Beta blockers, used for high blood pressure and heart conditions, work by blocking sympathetic activation. They can improve sleep for some people by reducing nighttime heart rate and blood pressure. But they can also cause fatigue and sometimes vivid dreams. Stimulant medications used for ADHD work by increasing sympathetic activity, which is helpful during the day for focus and attention, but can interfere with sleep if taken too late. Antidepressants affect neurotransmitter systems that interact with the autonomic nervous system in complex ways. Some are sedating, others are activating. Antihistamines, often used as sleep aids, work partly by reducing autonomic arousal, but they can interfere with sleep architecture, reducing time in REM sleep. This isn't to say medications are bad or should be avoided. Many people need them, and they can be life-saving. But it's worth being aware of how they interact with your autonomic nervous system and your sleep. If you're taking medications and experiencing sleep problems, it's worth discussing with your doctor whether the timing or type of medication might be adjusted. Substance use more broadly affects the autonomic nervous system's ability to regulate the sleep-wake cycle. We've already discussed caffeine and alcohol, but nicotine is another significant factor. Nicotine is a stimulant that activates the sympathetic system. Smokers often report that cigarettes help them relax, but this is largely because nicotine withdrawal creates tension that's then temporarily relieved by the next cigarette. It's not true relaxation or parasympathetic activation. It's relief from withdrawal. Smokers tend to sleep more poorly than non-smokers. They take longer to fall asleep, spend less time in deep sleep, and wake more frequently. Quitting smoking, paradoxically, can temporarily worsen sleep as the body adjusts to the absence of nicotine. But after a few weeks, sleep typically improves significantly as the autonomic nervous system recalibrates and finds a more natural rhythm without the constant stimulation and withdrawal cycle. Cannabis is complex because it affects different people differently, and different strains have different effects. Some people find it helps them relax and fall asleep. Others find it makes their thoughts race or increases anxiety. Like alcohol, cannabis can help you fall asleep faster, but often disrupts sleep architecture, particularly REM sleep. Regular users can develop tolerance and dependence, where they have difficulty sleeping without it, which suggests the autonomic nervous system has adapted to its presence and struggles to regulate normally without it. Let's talk about the role of ritual in supporting the parasympathetic shift towards sleep. Humans are creatures of habit, and our autonomic nervous system learns patterns. When you do the same things in the same order each evening, your nervous system begins to anticipate what comes next. The ritual itself becomes a cue, a signal that sleep is approaching. This is why sleep experts often recommend a consistent bedtime routine. The content of the ritual matters less than the consistency. For one person, it might be brushing teeth, washing face, reading for 20 minutes, then lights out. For another, it might be gentle stretching, journaling, or listening to music. What matters is that it's the same sequence each night, that it's calming rather than stimulating, and that it ends with sleep. Over time, your parasympathetic system learns to activate as you move through the ritual. By the time you lie down, your body is already shifting toward rest. The ritual creates a buffer between the demands of the day and the vulnerability of sleep. You're not going directly from responding to emails or watching the news to lying down and expecting to sleep. You're giving yourself a transition zone, a time when you're already beginning to let go, already moving from sympathetic to parasympathetic, and already preparing your nervous system for what comes next. This is also why it's helpful to keep the bedroom primarily for sleep. When your bedroom is also your office, when you spend hours there during the day, working or dealing with stressful tasks, the room becomes associated with sympathetic activation. Your nervous system doesn't know whether it should be alert or restful when you enter. But when the bedroom is primarily a place of rest, when you mainly go there when it's time to sleep, the room itself becomes part of the ritual, part of the cue that tells your parasympathetic system it's time to engage. Some people find it helpful to think of their evening routine as a form of self-care, a way of caring for their nervous system the way they might care for a tired child. You wouldn't expect a young child to go from running and playing directly to sleep. You'd give them a bath, read them a story, dim the lights, and speak softly. You'd create a gentle transition. Your autonomic nervous system needs similar care. It's been working all day, managing your stress response, keeping you functioning. Now it needs signals that it can stand down, that rest is permitted, and that safety has arrived. The concept of sleep hygiene encompasses many of these practices, keeping a consistent schedule, creating a dark and cool bedroom, avoiding screens before bed, limiting caffeine and alcohol, and developing a bedtime routine. These aren't arbitrary rules invented by sleep researchers to make life difficult. They're based on understanding how the autonomic nervous system works, what signals it responds to, and what conditions allow it to shift into parasympathetic rest most effectively. But it's also worth acknowledging that perfect sleep hygiene isn't always possible or practical. Life is complicated. Sometimes you have to stay up late for a sick child or an important deadline. Sometimes you can't control the temperature of your bedroom or the noise from neighbours. Sometimes you need that cup of coffee in the afternoon just to get through the day. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness and intention, doing what you can when you can to support your nervous system's natural rhythms. There's also something to be said for not becoming too rigid or anxious about sleep itself. Sleep anxiety, worrying about whether you'll sleep well, checking the clock, calculating how many hours you have left if you fall asleep right now, is itself a form of sympathetic activation. It's the opposite of the letting go that sleep requires. Sometimes the best approach is to care about sleep enough to create good conditions for it, but not so much that the caring becomes stress. This is where acceptance comes in. Accepting that some nights will be difficult. Accepting that sleep isn't always under your control. Accepting that lying in bed resting, even if you're not fully asleep, is still valuable. This acceptance itself can be calming and can reduce the sympathetic activation that comes from fighting against reality. Your parasympathetic system responds better to ease and acceptance than to striving and control. Let's consider the sensory environment more deeply. We've talked about light and sound, but there are other sensory factors that affect the autonomic nervous system's evening transition. Temperature, as we've mentioned, is significant. Most people sleep better in a cool room, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. This supports the natural drop in core temperature that facilitates sleep. But extremes in either direction can disrupt sleep. Too cold, and your sympathetic system activates to generate heat through shivering. Too warm, and it activates to cool you down through sweating. The texture and weight of bedding matter too. Soft, comfortable materials send signals of comfort and safety. Some people find weighted blankets helpful because the gentle pressure can activate parasympathetic pathways, similar to the effect of a hug. Others find them too constraining. It's individual, but it's worth paying attention to whether your bedding feels pleasant and comforting or irritating and uncomfortable. Scent can influence the autonomic nervous system as well. Lavender in particular has been studied for its relaxing properties. It appears to have mild sedative effects, probably working through multiple pathways, including the olfactory system's direct connections to the limbic system, which includes areas involved in emotion and autonomic control. Other scents, chamomile, sandalwood, and vanilla, are also reported as calming by many people. What matters more than the specific scent is whether you find it pleasant and associate it with relaxation. Air quality affects sleep more than most people realize. Stuffy, poorly ventilated rooms can lead to increased carbon dioxide levels, which can disrupt sleep quality even if you don't consciously notice it. Your autonomic nervous system monitors blood carbon dioxide levels, and when they rise, it can trigger a mild stress response. Fresh air, even just from cracking a window, can make a surprising difference for some people. Noise is complex because it's not just about volume, but also about predictability and meaning. Constant white noise or pink noise can actually help some people sleep by masking irregular sounds that might otherwise trigger sympathetic activation. Your autonomic nervous system is always listening, even during sleep, ready to alert you to potential threats. A steady, meaningless sound can be less disruptive than intermittent sounds, even if those sounds are quieter. But some sounds are more disruptive than others because of their meaning. A baby crying will wake most parents even from deep sleep, because the autonomic nervous system is tuned to recognize that sound as important. Your own name spoken will often wake you when other words won't. A sudden loud noise will trigger sympathetic activation. This is protective. You need to be able to wake if there's danger. but it can also make sleep fragile when you're in a noisy environment. Let's talk about what happens when sleep is chronically disrupted, when the parasympathetic nervous system doesn't get adequate nightly rest over weeks, months, or years. This is called sleep debt, and it accumulates. You can't just make up for lost sleep with one good night. The consequences of chronic sleep deprivation are significant and wide-ranging because they reflect the essential work that happens during parasympathetic dominant sleep. Immune function declines. People who are chronically sleep deprived get sick more often and take longer to recover. This makes sense given that much of the immune system's maintenance and learning happens during sleep. Metabolism becomes dysregulated. The hormones that regulate hunger and satiety get disrupted. Leptin, which signals fullness, decreases. Ghrelin, which signals hunger, increases. People tend to crave high-calorie foods when sleep deprived, and they're more likely to gain weight. Cardiovascular risk increases. Without adequate parasympathetic rest, blood pressure remains higher, heart rate variability decreases, and inflammation increases. Over time, this contributes to hypertension, atherosclerosis, and increased risk of heart attack and stroke. Cognitive function suffers. Attention, memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation all decline with sleep deprivation. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, is particularly affected. Mood becomes more unstable. The amygdala, involved in processing emotions, becomes hyperactive when you're sleep deprived, while its connections to the prefrontal cortex weaken. This means emotions are stronger and harder to regulate. Small frustrations feel enormous. You're quicker to anger, more likely to feel anxious or sad, and less resilient in the face of stress. All of this reflects inadequate parasympathetic recovery. The good news is that prioritizing sleep and creating conditions for better parasympathetic rest can reverse many of these effects. The body is remarkably resilient when given the support it needs. Better sleep improves immune function within days. Metabolism begins to normalize. Blood pressure decreases. Mood stabilizes. Cognitive function sharpens. It's never too late to support your autonomic nervous system's need for rest. There are times when medical intervention is necessary for sleep problems. If you're doing everything right, good sleep hygiene, stress management, healthy lifestyle, and still struggling with persistent insomnia or severe sleep disruption, it's worth seeing a doctor. Sometimes there are underlying medical conditions that need to be addressed. Sleep apnea, where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep, is surprisingly common and significantly disrupts sleep architecture and autonomic function. Restless leg syndrome, periodic limb movement disorder, and other sleep disorders can prevent the parasympathetic system from maintaining steady rest. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, is often more effective than medication for chronic insomnia. It works by changing thought patterns and behaviors around sleep, essentially helping to retrain the autonomic nervous system to associate bed with sleep rather than with wakefulness and anxiety. It addresses the sympathetic activation that occurs around bedtime in people with insomnia, helping them develop a healthier relationship with sleep. Sleep medications can be helpful in some situations, particularly for short-term insomnia related to acute stress or life changes. But they're not a long-term solution for most people because they don't address the underlying autonomic dysregulation. Many sleep medications alter sleep architecture, reducing time in certain stages or affecting sleep quality in ways that make sleep less restorative. They can also create dependence, where the nervous system adapts to their presence and struggles to initiate sleep without them. Let's consider napping and its relationship to the autonomic nervous system. Naps can be restorative when used appropriately. A short nap of 20 to 30 minutes during the afternoon can provide a boost of parasympathetic rest without entering deep sleep. You wake feeling refreshed rather than groggy. This brief descent into parasympathetic activity can help reset your nervous system if you're feeling stressed or depleted. Longer naps that include deep sleep can be more restorative, but also riskier. If you nap too long or too late in the day, you might enter slow wave sleep and wake feeling disoriented, experiencing what's called sleep inertia. More significantly, long or late naps can reduce your sleep pressure at night, making it harder to fall asleep at bedtime. Your autonomic nervous system might not be ready to shift into full nighttime rest if it's already had significant parasympathetic time during the day. For people who work night shifts or have otherwise disrupted schedules, strategic napping becomes more important. A nap before a night shift can help reduce the sympathetic strain of staying awake all night. A nap after a night shift, combined with creating dark, quiet sleeping conditions, can help the parasympathetic system engage despite the daytime light. As we move toward the conclusion of our journey together tonight, I want to reflect on the remarkable nature of what we've been discussing. Your autonomic nervous system is working right now, even as you listen. It's adjusted your heart rate based on your position, your level of relaxation, and your emotional state as you've been listening. It's regulated your breathing, probably deepening it if you've been following along attentively and calmly. It's maintained your blood pressure, your digestion, and your body temperature. It's been doing all of this without a single conscious thought from you. This system evolved over hundreds of millions of years, refined through countless generations, and designed to keep you alive and functioning in a complex, changing world. The sympathetic branch prepared your ancestors to run from predators, to hunt food, and to respond to immediate threats. The parasympathetic branch allowed them to rest, to heal, to digest, to reproduce, and to recover from the demands of survival. You carry this same system, this same ancient wisdom written into your nerves and neurotransmitters. And every night, when conditions allow, it guides you through the transition from wakefulness to sleep, from activity to rest, and from sympathetic to parasympathetic. It's a dance you've done every night of your life, though you've probably never thought about it consciously until now. The modern world presents challenges that your ancestors never faced. Artificial light disrupting your circadian rhythms, constant stimulation from screens and devices, psychological stress without physical resolution, work that follows you home, global news that makes the whole world feel threatened. These things can confuse your autonomic nervous system, can keep your sympathetic system more active than it should be, and can make the evening transition into parasympathetic rest more difficult. But understanding how the system works gives you power. Not control exactly, you can't directly command your parasympathetic system to activate, but influence. You can create conditions that support it. You can remove obstacles that block it. You can work with your biology rather than fighting against it. You can honor the ancient rhythms that your body still follows, even in this modern world. Supporting your parasympathetic nervous system isn't just about getting better sleep, though that's certainly valuable. It's about health more broadly. It's about resilience, about your ability to recover from stress, to heal from illness, to regulate your emotions, to connect with others, and to feel at peace in your own body. The parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and repair mechanism. When it functions well, everything else works better. This is an act of self-compassion, of caring for yourself in a fundamental way. You deserve rest. Your body needs it, is designed for it, and will function better with it. Creating the conditions for good parasympathetic rest each night is a way of respecting your own biology, your own needs, and your own humanity. As you prepare for sleep tonight, know that your body is already moving in that direction. Your parasympathetic nervous system is already at work, slowing your heart, deepening your breath, relaxing your muscles, cooling your core, and preparing you for the restorative journey of sleep. All you need to do is allow it. Remove the obstacles where you can. Create the conditions that support it. Then trust your body to do what it knows how to do. The vagus nerve will continue its patient work, sending its calming signals to your heart, your lungs, and your gut. Melatonin will rise in your bloodstream, opening the door to sleep. Your brain will gradually shift from beta waves to alpha to theta to the slow deep waves of restorative sleep. Your immune system will begin its nightly maintenance. Your tissues will repair. Your memories will consolidate. Your emotions will be processed and integrated. And you will rest, truly rest. Not because you forced it or earned it or deserved it, but because your body was built for this, designed for this, and needs this. The autonomic nervous system is your constant companion, your silent guardian, ensuring that you can engage with life when you need to and release from it when you need to. It never stops working, never takes a break, and never abandons its post. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, feel grateful for this remarkable system, for the vagus nerve wandering through your body, connecting brain to heart to gut, for the sympathetic chain that kept you alert and capable all day, for the parasympathetic fibers now gently pulling you toward rest, for the intricate balance that keeps you alive, keeps you healthy, and keeps you whole. Think of your ancestors all the way back through time who experienced this same transition every night. From the earliest humans huddled around fires, as darkness fell to people in every era since, all experienced the same shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic, all trusting their bodies to guide them into sleep. You're part of that unbroken chain, carrying the same nervous system, following the same ancient rhythms. Your body knows what to do. It's been practicing every night of your life. The shift from activity to rest, from sympathetic to parasympathetic, from doing to being. It's written into your biology, this ancient rhythm that connects you to every human who has ever lived, every one of whom needed this same transition from day to night, from wakefulness to sleep. When you support this transition, when you create an environment and routine that honors your autonomic nervous system's needs, sleep comes more naturally. Not perfectly, not every night, but more consistently, more restoratively. You wake feeling more refreshed, more yourself, and more capable of meeting the day. And the day itself becomes easier because you're functioning from a place of genuine rest rather than running on fumes and adrenaline. The autonomic nervous system is always seeking balance. When it's pushed too far towards sympathetic activation, it will eventually swing back toward parasympathetic. When it's in deep parasympathetic rest, it will eventually need to engage the sympathetic side to wake, to act, and to engage with the world. This constant dance between activation and rest, between doing and being, and between sympathetic and parasympathetic is the fundamental rhythm of your life. Honor that rhythm, respect it, work with it, and trust that your body, given the right conditions, will find its way to the rest it needs. Your autonomic nervous system has been refined over countless generations for exactly this purpose. It knows the way. All you have to do is clear the path and let it lead you home to sleep. Sleep well, wherever you are in the world. Trust your body. Trust the ancient rhythms that have guided humans through countless nights. Your autonomic nervous system is with you, doing what it does best, keeping you safe, keeping you balanced, and guiding you into the restoration that sleep provides. And when you wake tomorrow, the cycle will begin again. Sympathetic rising with the sun, parasympathetic returning with the night, over and over, day after day, year after year, a rhythm as reliable as the turning of the earth itself, as constant as the tide, as dependable as the seasons. Your body knows this rhythm in its bones, in its nerves, and in every cell. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight. Thank you for your curiosity, your attention, and your willingness to explore the hidden workings of your own biology. May tonight's rest be deep and restorative. May your parasympathetic nervous system complete its essential work. May you wake feeling renewed, restored, and ready to engage with whatever the day brings. And may you carry with you a new appreciation for the quiet miracle happening inside you right now, and every moment of every day and night of your remarkable life. The steady beat of your heart, the gentle rise and fall of your breath, the soft hum of digestion, the quiet repair of tissues, all of it orchestrated by your autonomic nervous system, that ancient, elegant system that's been keeping you alive since the moment you were born. Rest well, be at peace, and trust the wisdom of your body to guide you safely through the night and into the morning. Your autonomic nervous system has never failed you yet, and it won't tonight. It's already at work, already shifting you gently toward the rest you need. All you have to do is let go. Good night. Let's start with that last meal, which was the first thing that happened. Imagine that you are going to dinner. It could be something easy, like pasta with vegetables or chicken with rice and a salad on the side. You eat until you're full, and that comfortable feeling settles into your stomach. You don't know it yet, but this is the last food you'll eat for 3 days. The clock starts now. Nothing seems out of the ordinary for the first few hours. Your digestive system does what it always does. It breaks down the food you've eaten into its parts. Your stomach mixes everything with acid and enzymes until it turns into a thick liquid called chyme. This goes into your small intestine, where the real work of taking in nutrients starts. Carbohydrates are turned into simple sugars, with glucose being the main one. Proteins are broken down into amino acids, fats are broken down into fatty acids, and glycerol. These nutrients all go through the wall of your intestines and into your blood, where they are sent to every cell in your body. After that meal, your blood sugar goes up, as it always does. This makes your pancreas release insulin, a hormone that acts like a key to open your cells so they can take in glucose from the blood. Your cells use the energy they need right away to keep you thinking, moving, breathing, and keeping your body temperature stable. But here's the interesting part. Your body knows that food doesn't come on a set schedule. We weren't made to eat 3 meals a day and snacks. It got us ready for both feasts and famines, as well as successful hunts that ended with days of searching. So your body has learned how to save for when things are tough. There are 2 main ways that your body stores extra glucose, which is energy you don't need right now. Your liver and muscles first turn some of it into glycogen, which you can think of as tightly packed packages of glucose molecules that are linked together to save space. Your liver can hold about 100 grams of glycogen, and your muscles can hold about 400 grams, but this varies from person to person. The extra energy is turned into fat, which is mostly stored in adipose tissue, which is the fat that is under your skin and around your organs. Fat is a very good way to store energy. It has more than twice the energy per gram as carbohydrates or proteins. After about 4 hours, your digestive system has taken out most of the nutrients from the food you ate. Your blood sugar is going back to its normal level. You've entered the post-absorptive state, which is the time between meals when you're running on stored energy instead of fresh fuel. This is completely normal. You do this every night when you sleep. Your body smoothly switches from using the food you just ate to using the glycogen stored in your liver. It breaks the glycogen down into glucose and releases it into your bloodstream to keep your blood sugar stable. This is important to know because your brain is picky about what it eats. Your brain doesn't burn fat directly like your muscles do. Instead, it mostly uses glucose. It takes a lot of energy to run, even though it only makes up about 2% of your body weight. It uses about 20% of your resting energy expenditure. So keeping your blood sugar levels stable is very important, and your body has smart ways to make sure your brain never goes hungry. During the first 12 hours, you probably sleep for most of that time. Your liver is working quietly while you sleep, breaking down its glycogen stores bit by bit and releasing glucose into your bloodstream at just the right rate for your body. By the time you wake up in the morning and eat breakfast, you may have used up half of your liver's glycogen. If you ate now, you'd fill up those stores and start the cycle over again. But you're not eating. You're still doing this experiment, going into areas that modern life doesn't usually ask us to go. The word breakfast tells a story all by itself, doesn't it? Breakfast, the meal that ends the nightly fast. But today, we're not breaking anything. We're going deeper into that old relationship between eating and not eating to see what happens. At the 16 to 18 hour mark, something interesting starts to happen. Your liver doesn't have much glycogen left. Your body has to make a choice, or rather, it does so automatically without you even being aware of it. It starts to change how it uses energy. This change happens slowly, like turning a dial instead of flipping a switch. Your body starts to use fat more and more for energy, breaking down triglycerides from your fat tissue into fatty acids and glycerol. These fatty acids can be used directly for energy by your heart, muscles, and many other organs. This is good news because it means you can save some of your glucose for your brain. But this is where things get really interesting. Your liver turns some of those fatty acids into something called ketone bodies. These are tiny molecules, mostly beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, that have a unique quality. Ketone bodies can cross the blood-brain barrier, but fatty acids can't. They can give your brain energy. Ketogenesis is the process of making ketone bodies. When your body is mostly burning fat and making a lot of ketones, it is in a metabolic state called ketosis. At the 18-hour mark, you probably aren't very deep into ketosis yet, but you're getting there. The amount of ketones in your blood is slowly going up at first, then faster as the hours go by. We're now on the second day, which means we've gone 24 hours without food. You might be hungry, that's for sure. Hunger comes in waves, which is interesting. It's not a feeling that gets stronger all the time, it goes up and down. This is partly because hormones like ghrelin are released on a schedule that your body has learnt from how you usually eat. Your body releases ghrelin around 8 in the morning if you usually eat breakfast then. This makes you feel hungry, even if you don't need food. But if you don't eat, the ghrelin level goes down again after a while. The hunger goes away. This might not make sense at first. Shouldn't you get hungrier as time goes on without food? But keep in mind that your body is made for this. Being constantly hungry when food isn't available would be bad for you because it would waste mental energy on something you can't fix. It's better to have hunger come and go, with times when you're very motivated to find food and times when you're calm and can take care of other survival needs. Your liver's glycogen is almost gone by 36 hours. This is a big step forward. Your body is now fully committed to the metabolic shift we talked about before. The breakdown of fat is speeding up a lot. Your fat cells are sending fatty acids into your blood at a faster rate. Your liver is making ketone bodies faster. When you're well fed, your blood ketones are less than half a millimolar. Right now they might be 2 or 3 millimolar. There is also something else going on that sounds scary, but is actually a normal and necessary part of this process. some of the protein in your body starts to break down. Don't worry, you're not wasting away. You're not eating your muscles at a very fast rate. But your body needs more glucose than the small amount of glycerol that comes from breaking down fat can give it. It can make glucose from some amino acids through a process called gluconeogenesis. This mostly happens in your liver, where amino acids are turned into glucose molecules. What are the sources of these amino acids? Partly because proteins are always breaking down and building up in your body. Your cells are always breaking down old proteins and making new ones. When you're fasting, you're just breaking down a little more than you're building up. But your body is picky about this. It breaks down proteins that aren't as important first, keeping the proteins in your vital organs and to a large extent in your muscles, especially if you've used those muscles recently. This is why even moderate exercise while fasting can help keep your muscles from losing mass. Your body thinks that the signal of muscle use means that those muscles are still needed. You're at the end of the second day after 48 hours. You are now definitely in ketosis. Your blood may have 4 or 5 millimolar or more of ketones in it. Your brain, which we talked about earlier as an organ that needs glucose, is now getting 30 to 50% of its energy from ketones instead of glucose. When you think about it, this is amazing. Like a hybrid car that switches from gas to electric power, your brain has switched fuels. And here's something a lot of people say at this point. Their minds are clear. It doesn't make sense. You haven't eaten in 2 days, but a lot of people say they feel more focused and alert during this time. What could be the reason for this? We don't fully understand how everything works, but we do have some ideas. It looks like ketones are a great source of energy for the brain. They might cause less oxidative stress than breaking down glucose. There are also changes in the levels of neurotransmitters when you fast. Also, you might just feel more balanced and less prone to the energy dips that can happen after eating when your blood sugar is stable instead of going up and down with meals. We should also think about the evolutionary argument, but we should always be careful about just so stories. It makes sense that early humans who became sharper and more focused when they were hungry and who could think more clearly about where to find food and how to get it might have had an advantage over those who became sluggish and foggy. The people who could hunt or gather food better when they were hungry were more likely to find food, break their fast, and live long enough to pass on their genes. It's important to note that something else is going on during these first 2 days. Your metabolic rate, or the speed at which you burn calories, doesn't drop as much as you might think. Some studies even suggest that your metabolism may speed up a little during the first few days of fasting. Changes in hormone levels, especially an increase in norepinephrine, one of your body's stress hormones, seem to be behind this. This makes sense from an evolutionary point of view. When food is hard to find, you need to be alert and full of energy so you can look for it. You don't want to be tired and slow. We're now in the 3rd day, which means we've passed the 48-hour mark and are on our way to 72. This is very deep into the fast, farther than most people in modern developed countries ever go. Your body has completely adjusted to using fat as its main source of energy. Your ketone levels are high. Your blood sugar is lower than normal, but it's still in a safe range. It usually stays around 70 milligrams per deciliter thanks to gluconeogenesis in your liver. Your insulin levels are very low, which makes sense because insulin helps cells take in glucose from the blood, and there isn't much glucose to take in. Low insulin also helps break down fat, so everything is working together, like a symphony of metabolic changes. Autophagy is one of the most interesting things that happens during long periods of fasting. The word comes from Greek, where auto means self, and phagy means eating oneself. It sounds pretty bad, but it's actually a process that cleans and recycles cells. It speeds up a lot when you fast. This is how it works. Your cells gather damaged parts over time, like worn-out organelles, misfolded proteins, and bits of cellular debris. Usually your cells have ways to deal with this, but when there are a lot of nutrients around, these cleaning processes aren't at the top of the list. Autophagy goes up a lot when you fast, especially for long periods of time. Cells start to break down and recycle the damaged parts of themselves, turning them into new molecular building blocks. This has a lot of uses. It cleans up the house and gets rid of damage that could be dangerous. It gives you amino acids and other molecules that you can use in other ways. And it could be one of the reasons why fasting might be good for your health. The study of autophagy won a Nobel Prize in 2016. Most of the research was done on cells and animals, but there is more and more evidence that similar things happen in people when they fast. You're well into the third day by the time you reach 60 hours. You might notice that your hunger isn't as bad as it used to be. A lot of people say that their hunger goes down after the second day. Some of this is probably adaptation, which means your body is getting used to this metabolic state instead of fighting it. The waves of ghrelin release may be getting smaller, and for some people this state is almost like meditation. It gives them a sense of calm and clarity, which may be partly biochemical and partly psychological. It also gives them the satisfaction of proving to themselves that they can do something hard and that they don't need to eat all the time like modern life suggests. Your body is also getting better at saving some resources. Your kidneys are keeping sodium and other electrolytes more carefully. You should be drinking water during this fast to keep your water balance. That's something to keep in mind. When you fast, you don't eat food, but you do drink fluids. Your body needs water to do all of these metabolic processes, get rid of waste, and keep blood volume and circulation up. Some scientists say that your body has reached a steady state of fasting metabolism when you get close to 72 hours. If you kept going past this point, the changes wouldn't be fundamentally different, but they might get bigger. Your body would keep breaking down fat for energy, keeping blood sugar levels stable through gluconeogenesis, and making ketones. If the fast went on for a lot longer, the rate of protein breakdown might go up a little, but it would still be relatively low compared to the rate of fat breakdown. But let's stop here. At the end of 72 hours, 3 full days without eating, what has this test shown? First and foremost, it has shown you how adaptable your metabolism is. You have the ability to switch fuel sources, built into your cells. You can go from burning the food you just ate, to burning stored glycogen, to burning stored fat, without losing the energy your brain needs to work. This isn't a flaw in your design. It's a necessary adaptation that helped your ancestors survive in places where food was hard to find. You've learned that hunger is a real feeling, but it's not an emergency signal. It's something that comes and goes. You know from experience, or would know if you tried this, that you can stay mentally sharp, maybe even sharper than usual, for days without food. Your body hasn't stopped working or gone into crisis mode. Instead, it's just using a different fuel and burning the energy it saved up for this exact purpose. Of course, I should make it clear that not everyone should try fasting for 72 hours. If you have diabetes or another metabolic disorder, are pregnant or breastfeeding, or have a history of eating disorders, extended fasting could be dangerous. It's something that should be done carefully, and if you've never done it before, it's best to have a doctor watch over you. The goal of our journey tonight isn't to tell you what to do to improve your health, but to learn about the amazing things that happen in your body when you stop eating. It's also interesting to think about what happens when you break a fast that lasts for 72 hours. You should be careful when you start eating again, especially if you've been fasting for a long time. It's usually a good idea to start with something light, like broth, or a small amount of food that is easy to digest. For 3 days, your digestive system hasn't been working. Giving it too much food at once, like a big, heavy meal, could make it uncomfortable or, in very rare cases of very long fasting, cause more serious problems. But after a 72-hour fast, most healthy people can start eating normally again, even though their appetite is usually smaller than they thought it would be at first. When you eat again, the metabolic changes we've talked about basically go in the opposite direction. Your blood sugar goes up, insulin is released, ketone production slows down and then stops, fat breakdown slows down, and your body goes back to using glucose as its main fuel. You would be back to your normal metabolic state in a day or so, but the experience might have made you more aware of how complicated your body's energy management systems are. Fasting has been done for religious, spiritual, and health reasons in many cultures throughout history. The Greeks of old thought that fasting could heal people. Fasting is a part of many religions, such as Islam's Ramadan, Judaism's Yom Kippur, and Christianity's Lent. Many indigenous cultures around the world have used fasting as a part of spiritual practices and vision quests. People are becoming interested in fasting again in the modern world. This is partly because it might be good for their health, and partly because food is always available in developed countries, which is something that has never happened before in human history. Some studies show that fasting for short periods of time may have benefits beyond just cutting calories. Research involving animals has demonstrated that intermittent fasting may prolong lifespan, enhance indicators of metabolic health, diminish inflammation, and potentially lower the risk of specific diseases. There is less evidence for humans, but there are signs that similar benefits might exist. Better insulin sensitivity, lower cholesterol and triglyceride levels, lower levels of inflammatory markers, and better blood pressure. Some of these effects might be caused by the increased autophagy we talked about, but we should be careful not to exaggerate these benefits or see fasting as a cure-all. The research is still going on, and not all of it is going in the same direction. People react to fasting in very different ways. What works for one person might not work for another, and it might even make things worse. Many of the possible benefits of fasting could also be gotten in other ways, like eating less, improving the quality of your diet, or working out. The most valuable thing about knowing what happens during a 72-hour fast is not that everyone should try it, but what it teaches us about our bodies. If you're listening to this, you live in a time and place where food is probably plentiful and always available. You're probably never more than a few hours away from your next meal, and you can get whatever you want by driving a short distance or placing an order for delivery. In many ways, this is great. Food scarcity is a horrible thing, and getting rid of it is one of the best things people have done. But this wealth is also very new. For most of the developed world, it's only a few generations old, and in terms of evolution, it's only a blink of an eye. Your body still has the metabolic tools it needs for a world where food was scarce and fasting was a way of life. Seeing how well this machinery works can change the way you think about hunger, eating, and the link between food and energy. You are not always on the verge of starving. You have a lot of energy stored up inside you, and you have advanced ways to get to it when you need it. Isn't there something almost humbling about this? The knowledge that your body has abilities you've probably never used, and systems that keep you healthy and functioning without you having to think about them. Your body is balancing thousands of chemical reactions, keeping your temperature stable, fixing damage, and fighting off possible pathogens right now, even though you're thinking about something else or falling asleep. The story of a 72-hour fast is really about homeostasis, which is the way biological systems try to stay stable while adapting to new situations. Your body wants to keep things like blood pH, core temperature, blood glucose, blood pressure, and many others within a certain range. Your body doesn't freak out when things change, like when food stops coming in. It changes. It uses the resources it has to find new ways to keep those important parameters in place. Of course, this ability to adapt goes beyond just fasting. When you work out, your body gets stronger and builds up its endurance. It makes more red blood cells to get used to high altitudes. It helps you stay warm by making you better at making heat. It gets better at cooling down when it gets hot. You are always sensing, responding, and changing at every level, from cells to organs to systems in the whole body. The processes we've talked about tonight, like storing and breaking down glycogen, breaking down fat, making ketones, gluconeogenesis, and autophagy, are just a few of the many that make up an incredibly complicated web of biological activity. Each one could be the focus of its own lesson or hour of study. The changes in hormones that happen when you fast are interesting on their own. As we said, insulin levels go down, but growth hormone levels can go up by a lot. One of your stress hormones, cortisol, tends to go up. Leptin, a hormone made by fat cells that tells the body it's full, goes down. The hunger hormone ghrelin has the wave-like pattern we talked about. These hormonal changes have effects all over your body, changing not only your metabolism, but also your mood, sleep patterns, immune function, and more. These hormones don't work alone either. They interact with one another in complicated feedback loops. Insulin has an effect on leptin, which in turn has an effect on metabolism and appetite. Cortisol changes how sensitive insulin is. Growth hormone changes how your body uses nutrients. There are dozens of instruments playing parts in a symphony. Sometimes they work together, and sometimes they create tension, but they all work together to keep you alive and healthy. Before we say goodbye tonight, I want you to think about something. In a very real way, you're a walking library of evolutionary solutions to the problems of staying alive. Every system in your body, every metabolic pathway, every hormone, and every enzyme is a solution that worked well enough and consistently enough for millions of years to be passed down to you. It's not a new diet trend or a modern invention to be able to fast for days and still be able to think and move. It's an old gift from ancestors who lived through hard times by having bodies that could change. You don't have to fast for 72 hours though. Not everyone needs to or should test these skills. But knowing they exist and how they work can change how you feel about food and hunger. It can help you feel less anxious about skipping a meal or two. It can help you tell the difference between real hunger, the body's way of telling you it needs energy, and appetite, the desire to eat that can be caused by a lot of things that have nothing to do with energy needs. There are a lot of signs that tell us to eat in today's world. Food ads, the smell of restaurants, the sight of people eating, and even the time of day can all make you hungry. Food is often the main focus of social events. Eating can be a way to deal with boredom, stress, sadness, or celebration. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying food, the social aspects of eating, or the pleasure that food gives you. But it's important to know that eating isn't just about having fun or following social norms. At its core, it's about giving your body the nutrients and energy it needs. And your body is very good at managing energy and keeping things running smoothly even when you eat in a lot of different ways. The 72-hour fast we've been on tonight is really a journey into how flexible our metabolism is. It shows that your body can use different types of fuel depending on what is available. You can learn to be more flexible even if you don't fast for long periods of time. Eating habits that give your body a break from digesting all the time, let insulin levels drop, and start fat-burning processes can help keep and improve this metabolic flexibility. This could mean eating at the same time every day, having longer breaks between meals, or just being less afraid of moderate hunger and seeing it as a normal feeling that can be handled instead of an emergency. Your body is built to be strong and able to handle changes in the environment. Hormesis is the idea that some amount of stress and change, like the stress of working out, changing temperatures, or fasting every so often, may actually be good for you. Mild stresses that your body can handle may make you stronger and more able to handle stress in general. A life with constant comfort, where you never get too hot or too cold, are never hungry, and are never physically challenged, may actually be worse than a life with some variety and manageable challenges that require your body to adapt. As you fall asleep tonight, your body starts its nightly fast, which is like the metabolic processes we've been talking about, but on a smaller scale. Your body will slowly switch from using food you just ate to stored energy while you sleep. Your liver will break down glycogen into glucose and send it into your blood to keep your blood sugar steady. You might make small amounts of ketones by morning if you sleep long enough without eating. This is normal and happens every night at the same time. When you wake up and eat breakfast, which breaks your fast, you'll start the cycle all over again. Food will enter the body, nutrients will be absorbed, some will be used right away, and some will be stored. And then when the food is gone hours later, your body will smoothly switch to using those stores. Your metabolism goes back and forth between these states all the time, usually without you even thinking about it. The body of a person is an amazing thing. You are an amazing thing. You are made up of trillions of cells that work together and talk to each other through chemical signals. They coordinate their activities to make you. These biological processes are what make your conscious awareness, your thoughts and feelings, your plans and memories, and everything else that makes you you. We've talked about how your brain gets the energy it needs to think through the systems we've looked at tonight. Even now, as you read these words and try to understand them, you may be making connections to other things you know or asking questions. You're burning glucose or ketones, keeping ion gradients across neural membranes, and releasing neurotransmitters across synapses. Your biology is always with you. You are your biology, which shows up in your thoughts and experiences. Learning about how your body works, how it keeps itself healthy, and how it handles problems can help you appreciate how amazing it is that you are alive. You didn't have to think about how to deal with the last meal. You didn't have to tell your liver to store glycogen or let glucose out on purpose. You didn't need to tell your liver to make ketones or your fat cells to break down fat. It all happened on its own, thanks to systems that have been fine-tuned over millions of years. These systems were working long before you were born and will keep working until the day you die. You should learn this because it's not just intellectual curiosity. It's also because you want to know how your body manages energy in different situations. It's also useful because it might help you decide when and how to eat better, ease your worries about being hungry, and make you more sure of your body's abilities. And maybe most importantly, it's a source of awe and appreciation for how complex and adaptable the biological systems are that let you live and see the world. So as you go to sleep tonight, remember that your body is taking care of you, just like it always has. It's taking in what happened during the day, putting memories together, fixing tissues, and keeping all the systems that keep you alive running, and it's keeping track of its energy stores, carefully controlling its blood sugar levels, deciding whether to use stored glycogen or start breaking down fat, and getting ready for whatever problems tomorrow may bring. You are in good hands, the hands of systems that have been tested and improved over millions of years and across many generations. Take it easy. Your body knows what it needs to do.